All right, we're live. What's up, Toy Town? Yeah, I know they're lying because their lips are going to be moving and they're breathing. So yeah, they're lying to us. A very, very sure bet. Oh no, why would look like he just doesn't like me. I am kind of an acquired. Let's see. Not expecting them to go live quick. But let me go ahead and screen share over so we can keep an eye on this. Run Gun, what's up, man? Good morning. Here it is. So I kind of knew this hearing with Jack Hur was coming up. Dang old Matt, what's up, my brother? Live to ride. What's up? What's happening, my brother? So I kind of knew the one hearing was coming up. The one on the January 6th pipe bombs, I didn't know was coming up. This hearing starts at 10. The other one starts at 10:30. So I might kind of swap in between these two hearings a little bit because they've been pushing this lie about pipe bombs on Jan 6 forever. And it looks like a complete fucking fed trap, like a lot of stuff. So we'll see. We'll see what they got to say. We'll be swapping back and forth a little bit. But just in case anybody doesn't know, this hearing is with Jack Hur, whatever his name is. The one that said Joe Biden was the feeble old man that, yes, he had classified documents. No, they weren't stored properly. And, well, we can't prosecute him because he's kind of a feeble-minded old man, and, it just wouldn't be fair to him, basically, is what came out in that. So, yeah, we'll see what they got to say this morning. If nothing else, it'll be interesting to watch them flap their gums. Republicans will probably be jumping up and down, and Democrats are going to blow the whole thing off. We pretty well know what the hearing is going to look like. Joe Biden had his stuff. It wasn't like Trump and Mar-a-Lago, and he had classified documents in his garage next to his car. At least Trump had security all over the damn place. Where you couldn't just walk in. So we'll see. I just figured it'd be interesting. Trying to take care of a couple things for work. Because even though I'm home, I'm still doing stuff for work before I go in this afternoon. So if my freaking scanner will ever wake up, I might be able to scan the documents I need to scan and send them in. No, I'm going to have to go by my boss's office and scan all the stuff in later. It's not like it's the end of the world or anything. Oh, man. We'll see. She put. Okay, I see. Never mind. I'll take care of it. Yeah, none of which Biden was authorized to possess. Yeah, he wasn't. He wasn't even near authorized to bring that stuff out of any kind of classified setting and bring the shit home with him. You can make arguments about Trump all you want, but considering he's the head of the United States at that time, he could declassify anything that he wanted. That's not even a question to anybody with a rational brain. I don't understand sometimes why these people are so flippant with supposedly classified material. Now, classified can be many different levels of classified, from average, hey, this is only interagency stuff, to top super secret. And some of it's just going to be some general communications, and some of it could actually hold some pretty serious intelligence information. Some of it could be some general memos about, hey, we really don't like this person running this country. It can basically be government gossip. But still, anybody in the armed forces who did this stuff, who walked out of a secure area with these documents, or even allowed someone else to see some of these documents, would go to Fort Leavenworth. No questions asked. It'd be done. You got a president with all these documents, or a vice president at the time with all these documents, and I think some he had from his time as a senator, which definitely was no-no, and they're just blowing it off. Because Biden is, a nice old man. He just has problems with his memory. But he's running for president again. That makes complete sense. If you're a fucking idiot. Yeah, they could, Matt. They can classify anything. And especially knowing all the guys. Hell, when my dad was his last bit in the military, he dealt with top secret stuff quite a bit, but in his last little bit in the military, he'd tell you that there were files that he had. He couldn't, if someone walked into his office, he had to make sure those files were secured. He couldn't just even leave them on his desk and walk out of his office. Hell, I remember going to see him when he was at NATO headquarters right outside of Heidelberg. I mean, working signals intelligence. He's dealt with a lot of shit like that, and he will tell you in a hurry. Yeah, if he messed up with those documents, his ass would have been in Fort Leavenworth. I know other guys that have worked military intelligence tell you the same thing. They won't even talk about things that they've seen, much less leave things sitting in the garage that they're not supposed to have. Damn it, the collar of my shirt's coming apart. It sucks. I like this shirt. Bring home leftover birthday cake? Yeah, probably so with him. The man has been declining for a long time. And even before he started declining, he's always been an absolute racist idiot. So there's that. And I don't get why people don't, you can go find on C-SPAN, God love him, you can go find videos of him throughout his entire career. And you can see just how much of a moron this guy is, how much of a moron he's always been. And you can watch the absolute decline of this guy's mental faculties. And physical faculties, for that matter. So, anyway, we're going to hear from the one who refused to charge him with anything. And it's going to be a complete smoke show. The other hearing, like I said, we're going to bounce to that one kind of when it starts, and may bounce back and forth in between these two about, the J6th PiPe BoomS. And that's going to be a complete shit show. There are so many questions about that stuff. It ain't even funny. It was a complete Fed trap, in my opinion. My very humble and verbose opinion a lot of times. So we'll see. Anyway, hopefully it'll give us something to do a little while this morning. If nothing else, like I said, I hope you got hit waiters, because we're going to be deep in a bunch of bullshit in just a little bit. Whenever they kick these hearings off, hopefully they'll kick them off on time and won't drag their feet all morning, but we'll see. You never know with these people, man. It's just freaking. I was talking to someone the other day. Hell, it might have been my mother-in-law. I think it probably was. And talking about just the way these people lie to us, just so absolutely fluently. And it really should be, anytime these people are talking in an official capacity, they should be under oath. Jason Ewing, what's up, my brother? They should be treated as though they're under oath. The president shouldn't be able to get up there and absolutely lie right to your face, and neither should members of Congress. And when you find out they have completely been lying to your face, they should be charged with perjury. But no, it's not the way it works. To Jason, man, my wife like to busted a gut when I showed her what you sent me. She was like, except for a little bit in the eyes, dead on. Well, that the fact I don't have enough equipment down there to slam anything more than a ham sandwich, probably, but it is what it is. I'm like a stud gerbil. Oh, son of a bitch. Might as well kick this off with a little bit of humor. This scanner is not going to work for me this morning. So we'll see what these folks got to say this morning. Especially after listening to the oral arguments last night, my head freaking just. I really, really need to invest in like a company that does painkillers. All headache meds, migraine meds. Hell, they need to sponsor my channel at this point. Kick through some of my emails real quick, make sure I'm not missing anything this morning. I think I'm pretty well caught up on all that. There's some other stuff I'm going to have to hit once I get to work this afternoon. So I'll take care of that. Oh, it's fun. Oh yeah, Jason, yes, absolutely. That is a coming. Whenever I might save it and do it on the. I still got to put together the Man Against the Masses meme stream, and that'll probably come up then too. Yeah, Tortown, there's been plenty of court cases over stuff like that where it's, I mean, I tell you flat out, with very few exceptions, police and authorities can lie to you, lie dead to your face, and it's not going to be entrapment. It's not going to be perjury on their part. They just lie to you all day long. I can't remember the cases. There's been some about, politicians in line. It's like one of them might have made it all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, nope, they can lie to you. They can lie dead to your face. Doesn't matter. Dropping stuff. So, we are not ruled by honest people at all whatsoever. It's a crying damn shame. I mean, at least if they told you the truth about some shit. But it's all to protect their power. It's all to protect their authority. And it's all just to basically gain more power and authority. Biden that wasn't a freaking State of the Union address. That was an absolute stump speech that he's been given for at least 2 years now. Flat out lie to you the whole time. And of course, the mainstream media is going to push that shit, and they're just going to fawn all over the dude. Oh, he did such a good job. No, he didn't. He sat there and lied to you. He lied dead to your face for over an hour. There's been a couple of news outlets. I think even the Washington Post was busting him out on some of it. Like, no, that's not how this works. Manufacturing has not increased. It has increased over the low rates after, dealing with COVID, but manufacturing overall is still lower than ever. But hey, If you just get your these days, if you just get your news from the mainstream media, you're an absolute moron. You shouldn't be trusted with so much as a fucking potato gun. Come on, plug in, damn it. Well, it's going to lead to a lot of vigilante justice sooner or later. It's definitely going to be at some point where people have enough of this crap. Okay, let's try. I charge my goon bean batteries. I don't know when we'll hit that point, but it's coming. It may not even be in my lifetime. It could be this year. With as much screwy stuff that's going to go on, I think, in the next 7 months or so. Yeah, I'm not advocating for it. There's times where I wish we'd go ahead and get off our asses and do something before they absolutely destroy every freedom we got. But I'm in no means advocating for it. Now, will I advocate for states to secede? Yes. Draw up treaties. Tell the federal government, have a good day. You agree to these terms, we agree to those terms, and we're out. Deuces. We have a constitution. We have protections for our people. We're going back to that, and all this horseshit you've pushed for the last 150 years can just go away. Have a nice day. I would definitely say that could be done, and that could be done peacefully. It should have been peaceful the first time. And if you agree that, our Constitution is this great document, Bill of Rights, all that stuff, and that it is governance by the consent of the governed, then that means people can withdraw that consent. So, because otherwise, it's not governance by the consent of the governed anymore. It turns into what it is now, which is governance at the point of a gun. There's no law, no tax, or anything else that is not backed up by the threat of government violence, either to throw your ass in prison, strip everything you own, kick your door in the middle of the night. It's the way we're ruled these days. It's not people agreeing to certain things anymore. And it hasn't been for a long time.
Meeting will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing on the report of Special Counsel Robert Hur.
Let me know if the audio
The chair
is
now
good, guys.
recognizes the gentleman from
It's
the
turned
state
up
of
as loud as it's
Wisconsin
gonna go.
for
Yeah, to a certain point they would, Tor. But if we were all living under the same agreement, then it'd be fine if they balkanized.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What we would do at that point is turn government into a local
pursuant
matter
to an
again,
agreement with the
and then
ranking
all these
member
federal dickheads
Nadler,
up
and
here
without
would
objection,
be out of the
Chairman
equation.
Comer and Ranking Member Raskin will be permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purposes of making opening statements and asking questions of the witness. They each will receive 3 minutes for an opening statement and 5 minutes to question the witness. The chair now recognizes himself
Yes.
for an opening statement. Robert Hur was appointed special counsel on January 12th,
Law
2023.
enforcement is definitely a huge
He had a
issue
fundamental question to
when they
address.
just follow orders.
Did Joe Biden unlawfully retain classified information? The answer, yes, he did. Page 1 of Mr. Hur's report, he says this: our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. He further writes, Mr. Biden willfully retained marked classified documents about Afghanistan and handwritten notes in his notebooks, which he stored in unsecure places in his home. Joe Biden kept classified information, and Joe Biden failed to store classified information properly. Mr. Hur made these determinations after interviewing 147 witnesses. He examined 7 million documents, including emails, text messages, photographs, videos, toll records, and other materials from both classified and unclassified sources.
And funny enough, the
there's more.
FBI didn't go
Joe Biden not only kept information he wasn't allowed to keep, and he not only failed to secure that information properly, he also shared it with people who weren't allowed to see it. Shared that information with his ghostwriter. And remember, this is information that only individuals with a security clearance are supposed to see. Mr. Hur told us on page 200 of his report that it's the kind of information that, quote, risk serious damage to America's national security. What did Joe Biden have to say about all this? What was his explanation? On page 94 of Mr. Hur's report, Joe Biden said he took his notebooks with him after his vice presidency because, quote, they're mine. And every president before me has done the same exact thing. Never mind the fact that he had never been president when he took this information. But what comes through is Joe Biden felt he was entitled. You can almost hear it. You can feel the arrogance in the statement. They're mine. But even with all that, Mr. Hur chose not to bring charges because, quote, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did in our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. A forgetful old man who Mr. Hur said did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, and forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term as vice president began. Mr. Hur produced a 345-page report, but in the end, it boils down to a few key facts. Joe Biden kept classified information. Joe Biden failed to properly secure classified information. And Joe Biden shared classified information with people he wasn't supposed to. Joe Biden broke the law. But because he's a forgetful old man who would appear sympathetic to a jury, Mr. Hur chose not to bring charges. Mr. Hur, we think it's important that you be able to respond to President Biden's response to your report. So we're going to play a short video of President Biden's press conference after your report was released, because there's things in this press conference that the President of the United States says that are directly contradicted by what you found in your report. So if we could play that video.
Hey, everybody.
How much of a just
Let
him
me say
walk?
a few things before I take your questions. As you know, the special counsel released his findings today about their look into my handling of classified documents.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's
How
totally
bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. That's
Do you
my
feel your memory has gotten worse,
No,
Mr. President?
My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? You know, I guess I just forgot what was going on.
Mr. President,
Happened because you're fucking run by a
How
bunch
are
of
you going to
poor
assuage them?
bastards.
And do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns about your age?
Only by some of you.
Mr.
Criminal liability today.
Mr. President.
Do you take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material?
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and
So this is
points
where he
out
pushes it all off.
things
on
that
staff.
appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff.
Mr. President, Mr. President, for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, "Watch me." Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They expressed concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer
Because
to
I'm the
that
most
question?
qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
Do you believe that, guys? Mr. President, why
He's
are
the
you
most qualified
saying
person in the United States to run the United States, get into the
I
White
did not share classified information. I did not share it.
With your ghostwriter.
With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But the
What
special counsel said in the
Well, no,
report
he
that he
did
did.
not say that.
Okay,
He did not say that.
But Mr. President, one
Well,
of the.
let me answer your question. The fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was of this multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified. I should have said should be private because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what he's referring to. It was not classified information in that document. That was not classified.
Had a lot of classified documents.
When you look back at this incident, is there anything you would do differently now? And do you think that a special prosecutor should have been appointed in the first place in both of these cases?
First of all, what I would have done is oversee the transfer of the material that was in my office, in my offices. I should have done that. If I go back, I didn't have the responsibility to that. That was my staff was supposed to do that, and they referenced that in the report. And my staff did not do it in a way that, for example,
You're
I didn't know
responsible for
how half the
overseeing your
boxes
staff,
got
you
in my
jackass.
garage. Until I found out staff gathered them up, put them together, and took them to the garage in my home. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked or able to be locked. It was in my house. It wasn't out in.
Dude, they were in
like,
your garage sitting
Mar-a-Lago
next to
in
your
a public
car.
place where, and none of it was high classified. Didn't have any of that red stuff on it. You know what I mean? Around the corners? None of that. And so I wish I had paid more attention to how the documents were being moved and where. I thought they were being moved to the archives. I thought all of it was being moved. That's what I thought. Now, what was the last part of your question?
Whether a special counsel should have been appointed in this case and in the case of your rival president, former
I
president?
think a special counsel should have been appointed. And the reason I think a special counsel should have been appointed is because I did not want to be in a position that they looked at Trump and weren't going to look at me, just like they looked at the vice president. And the fact is they made a firm conclusion. I did not break the law, period. Thank you all very, very much.
You did break the law.
The hostage negotiation, look,
Now, this is where he turns around, then he gets himself in some deep shit right here. His
I'm of
passport
the
is terrible.
view, as you know, that
All right, I'm listening, but I gotta get some more coffee.
of the response
Coffee is important.
in the Gaza Strip has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. Let them make them part of the Middle East and recognize them fully in return for certain things that the United States would commit to do. And the commitment that we were proposed to do related to two items. I'm not going to go in detail, but one of them was to deal with the protection against their arch enemy to the northwest, northeast, I should say. The second one, by providing ammunition and material for them to defend themselves. Coincidentally, that's the time frame when this broke out. I have no proof what I'm about to say. but it's not unreasonable to suspect that the Hamas understood what was about to take place and wanted to break it up before it happened.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to need everybody to hold for a moment.
Chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler, for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you have such information, such admiration for the president that you allowed him to take the first 10 minutes of this hearing. Mr. Chairman, House Republicans may be desperate to convince America that white conservative men are on the losing end of a two-tiered justice system, a theory that appeals to the MAGA crowd but has no basis in reality. But your comments today make me wonder if you have read the special counsel's report at all. The Hur report does help us draw a distinction between President Biden and Donald Trump, just not the one you want. Two distinctions, actually. First, the report is clear that, quote, at no point did the special counsel find evidence that Mr. Biden intended or had reason to believe the information would be used to injure the United States or to benefit a foreign nation, close quote. With respect to the classified documents found in President Biden's possession, quote, the decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward, close quote. And with respect to the special counsel's investigation, quote, Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his homes, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation, close quote. President Biden acted responsibly, cooperated completely, and the decision to decline criminal charges was relatively straightforward. In short, to borrow a phrase from the last administration, the Hur report represents the complete and total exoneration of President Biden. And how does that record contrast with President Trump, the documents he retained, and the criminal charges pending against him in Florida? We know that Trump deliberately took large amounts of classified information from the White House. He has admitted as much, occasionally pretending that he classified this information without telling anyone on his way out the door. We know that he stored that information around Mar-a-Lago in the craziest of places, on the ballroom stage, spilled across the floor of an unlocked closet next to the toilet. We know that he showed classified military plans to an author interviewing him at Bedminster. Quote, as president, I could have declassified it, Trump says on an audio recording. Now I can't, you know, but this is still a secret. Still a secret, close quote. So much for the declassification theory. We know from the indictment that Trump is alleged to have shared these classified documents with many other visitors to Mar-a-Lago. And we know that, despite this outrageous conduct, the Department of Justice gave Trump every opportunity to avoid criminal charges. Again, in the special counsel's words, quote, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. He not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it, close quote. Why did the president charge former President Trump but not President Biden? Not because of some vast conspiracy, not because the so-called deep state was out to get him, but because former President Trump was fundamentally incapable of taking advantage of even one of the many, many chances he was given to avoid those charges. Which brings me to the second distinction this report helps us draw between President Biden and Donald Trump.
It didn't say this report
Simply
exonerated Biden.
President Biden had the mental acuity to navigate this situation. Donald Trump did not. Much has been made of the special counsel's gratuitous comments about the President Biden's
another
age.
good point.
But let's set the context. After returning every classified document, after opening his home to federal investigators, while simultaneously managing the first hours of the crisis in Israel, President Biden volunteered to sit through a 5-hour interview with the special counsel. I believe, as is his habit, President Biden probably committed a verbal slip or two during the interview. And I'm not sure any of that matters, because when the interview was over, Mr. Hur completely exonerated President Biden. And then there is Donald Trump.
Refusing to charge is not
exoneration. Not
exoneration.
one, but dozens of opportunities to avoid criminal liability.
What must that say about his mental state? Here, too, the record speaks for itself.
One of the
It
great
is one of the
memories of all
biggest
time,
lying
James Webb.
sacks
Don't
of
remember
shit.
the names. Don't remember the name.
Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's the leader of Turkey.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley is in charge of security.
3 years later, how about that?
Did you actually have a one-on-one with Comey?
Not much, not even that I
Can,
remember.
can we have a battle of the gaffes
We
here?
have languages coming into our country. We have nobody that even speaks
Hard
those
to think.
languages.
What's up,
They're
my
truly
brother?
foreign languages. Nobody speaks them. Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Brother Ag,
Very
hopefully you're doing
secure.
good this morning.
Oh,
I have a really good memory. Your next wife was a woman by the name of Marla Maples.
that's right.
Do you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
It's called like Up Here, and it's called
Yeah, about
Memory, and
100%.
it's called other things.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best memories?
I don't remember that.
And Putin, has so little respect for Obama that he's starting to throw around the nuclear word. You heard that nuclear.
We have to win in November, or we're not going to have Pennsylvania. They'll change the name.
I talked to Putin a lot.
How much did you ask him that?
I don't remember that. I saw that this morning. I don't remember asking him that
Yeah.
question. I have a good memory and all that stuff, like a great memory.
For 20 years, they were fighting ISIS. I defeated ISIS in 4 weeks.
And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
I'm not cognitively. And you know what? When I am, you're going to know it. You're going to be the first people. I know my people. You'll say,
Yeah,
all
you
right,
gotta be
Trump, you
careful
did a
of that
good
shit.
job. Get the hell out of
And-
here. That's it.
It is way easy to be pulling shit like that and either turn wrong or twist wrong or.
That is a
something.
man who is incapable of avoiding criminal liability, a man who is wholly unfit for office, and a man who, at the very least, ought to think twice before accusing others of cognitive decline.
See, this
Thank you
is
for
what we
being
call
here today, Mr.
projection,
Hur.
kids.
Thank you for illuminating a stark choice for this country in the months to come. I look forward to your testimony, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, for an opening statement.
Thank you. In August 2022, President Biden questioned in a 60 Minutes interview how anyone can be that irresponsible when asked about classified documents in the possession of former President Trump. But when President Biden said this, he knew that he had stashed classified materials in several unsecured locations for years, dating back to his time as vice president and even as a U.S. senator. President Biden, the White House, and his personal attorneys have not been honest with the American people about his
like I
willful
said it earlier
retention of
before the hearing
classified
started. He had
materials
classified
and
documents
continue
from when
to
he was
hide
a
information
senator.
from Congress. President Biden's attorneys claim to have first discovered classified material at Penn Biden Center on November 2nd, 2022. However, President Biden and his lawyers kept it secret from the American people before the midterm elections. CBS News broke the story in January 2023, leaving Americans to wonder if the White House had any intention of ever disclosing that President Biden hoarded classified documents for years. One of my first actions after becoming chairman of the House Oversight Committee was to launch an investigation into President Biden's mishandling of classified documents. This investigation started before Special Counsel Hur was named, and what we found is alarming. Information obtained through multiple transcribed interviews conducted by the Oversight Committee contradict the
he's
White
done.
House's
That's what's
and
happened,
President
Barbie.
Biden's personal attorney's narrative about the discovery of
Biden
classified
has always
documents
been a
at the
crooked
Penn
SOB.
Biden Center. In fact, the real timeline began in the spring of
Self-important.
2021, not November 2022,
Lied
as the
every
White
time
House
he's opened his
claimed.
mouth.
Additionally, the classified documents were not kept
Plagiarized.
in a locked closet, as asserted by the White House. We've also learned that 5 White House employees and a Department of Defense employee were involved in the early stages of coordinating the organizing,
It
moving,
amazes
and
me
removing
how
of
many
boxes that
people,
were
with
later
as
found
long
to
as Biden's
contain
political career
classified
has been,
materials. There's no reasonable explanation
won't go
as to
back
why
and do
so
a
many White House
simple
employees were concerned
look
with
at his
retrieving
political career,
boxes they
things he said in
believed
the
only
past, in his
contained
own
personal
words. Go watch
documents
video of
and
it.
materials. Why did President Biden keep
And they
these specific documents in
fucking act like
unsecure
he just
locations
fell out of the
for years?
goddamn sky.
Many questions remain, but now the White House is obstructing Congress as we seek the truth.
Oh, yeah, media, of course, they're running
We've
interference.
subpoenaed former White House counsel Dana Remus to
This
appear for a
report from
deposition to
Jack
provide
Smith coming
information
out
to
and
our
the things that
committee,
it said, this
but
is
the White
all
House is seeking
choreographed.
to block her testimony. We've also subpoenaed the
Biden
Department
would have
of
stepped down a
Justice
long
for
time
audio
ago, but see,
recordings
Kamala
and
Harris is so
transcript of
damn
President Biden's interview
unlikable.
with Special Counsel
Nobody
Hur.
wants her
These were
heading
due the
anything.
morning of the State of the Union. Only this morning, a couple of hours before today's hearing,
If he had a
the Department of
half-assed
Justice
strong vice
finally
president, he would have stepped
provided the
down not too
transcript of
long
President
after he took
Biden's
office.
interview with Special Counsel Hur. The timing is not coincidental.
Instead,
Although
he's
we've had
just a
little time to
puppet.
review the
Someone's got their
transcript,
hand
from
up
what
his
we
ass
have
making his
seen,
lips move.
it is clear that the White House did not want Special Counsel Hur's final report to be released. The White House has refused to be transparent with the American people about the president's mishandling of classified documents. And worse, they have appeared to have lied about the timeline, about who handled the documents, and even about the contents of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Hur. That is why today's hearing is important. Transparency is what we seek today, and we look forward to Special Counsel Hur's testimony. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Raskin, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan. There are just three basic points that all Americans need to understand
here we go.
about Mr. Hur's report. Number one,
Jamie
the
Raskin.
special counsel exonerates President Biden. The very first line of the report says it all. Quote, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter." We would reach the same conclusion even if Department of Justice policy did not foreclose criminal charges against a sitting president. Second, the report establishes that President Biden offered complete and unhesitating cooperation with the special counsel's investigation. The Justice Department and the National Archives were proactively notified of the classified documents and they were turned over. The president allowed the FBI to search his homes, and he sat for a voluntary interview for more than 5 hours on October 8th and October 9th, even as he was busy responding to Hamas's vicious terrorist attacks in Israel. The report thus demonstrates President Biden's complete devotion to the rule of law and his respect for a fair and independent Department of Justice. President Biden did not assert executive privilege or claim
The guy
absolute
probably
immunity
leaves
for
a damn
presidential
slime
crimes.
trail
He did not
wherever he goes.
hide boxes of documents under his bed or in a bathtub. He did not fight investigators, nor did he seek to redact a single word of Mr. Hur's report. He consented to the search of numerous locations, including his homes, and he did everything he could to cooperate, not obstruct.
Well, see, he's telling the truth
Third,
that Biden didn't want
Special
to.
Counsel
Biden didn't
Hur
seek to redact
repeatedly
any of Hur's
emphasizes
report.
that President Biden's conduct
Well, I'm
contrasts
telling you, this is
sharply
planned.
with that of former President Trump. Hur observes that unlike President Biden,
They got to
quote,
look at the
the
report and
allegations
approve
set
the
forth
report
in the
before it
indictment
was
of Mr.
released.
Trump, if proven, would clearly establish not only Mr.
That's
Trump's
like on the
willfulness,
first page of
but
Hur's
also
report.
serious aggravating factors. He sets forth these points of difference in detail. Quote, most notably after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it, unquote. He returned only a portion of subpoenaed documents and deliberately withheld the rest. Unlike President Biden, Trump did not alert the National Archives or DOJ of the documents, nor did he turn over all the classified materials in his possession. He did not agree to sit down for a voluntary interview with the special counsel. He never consented to a search of his home. On the contrary, Trump suggested that his attorney hide or destroy evidence requested by the FBI and the grand jury. Trump carefully instructed his aide to move boxes of classified documents to hide them from the FBI. Trump tried to delete incriminating security tape footage from Mar-a-Lago, and he got his attorney to provide a false certification to the FBI saying he had produced all the documents in his possession. He did not. Given that this report is so damning in the contrast between Biden and Trump, it is hard for me to see why our colleagues think that this hearing advances their flailing and embarrassing quest to impeach the president of the United States. What America sees today is evidence of one president who believes in the rule of law and works to protect it, and one who has nothing but contempt for the rule of law and acts solely in pursuit of his own constantly multiplying corrupt schemes. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Robert Hur was appointed as
When
the
this hearing on
special
the pipe
counsel in
bomb
January
starts,
2023 to
especially
investigate
when I
the
hear the
removal
opening of that
and
hearing.
retention of classified documents discovered
gonna
at the Penn
swap to that
Biden
one
Center
as
for
soon as it opens
Diplomacy and Global Engagement. He previously served as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General at the Department of Justice
I'll
and
be
as the United
probably
States
flipping
Attorney for the
back and
District of
forth.
Maryland. He was a law clerk for Chief Justice William Rehnquist and also clerked for Judge Alex Kaczynski on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We welcome our witness and thank him for appearing today. We'll begin by swearing you in. Mr. Hur, would you please stand? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and you can be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Mr. Hur, you may begin with your opening statement. Make sure you got that mic on, if you could, Mr. Hur. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, members of the committee, good morning. I'm privileged to have served our country for the majority of my career, a decade and a half, most of those years with the Department of Justice. I have served as a line prosecutor, a supervisor, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General.
On to the subcommittee to participate in today's hearing. He will arrive a little later. As a former Army explosive ordnance disposal technician, Congressman Mast is well positioned to expose any failures of the January 6th device responses that we will analyze today. I appreciate having him here, and we look forward to his discussion. Thank you, Ranking Member Torres, members of the subcommittee, and our witnesses for joining us at today's oversight hearing. January 6, 2021 was an incredibly dark day for our country.
Fedsurrection.
Our Capitol was overrun, and some individuals assaulted the U.S. Capitol police officers, and they breached our halls. Additionally, explosive devices were placed at the DNC and the RNC, threatening our security. Today, we will focus on identifying the numerous security failures that proceeded and continue to persist following the discovery of 2 explosive devices near the U.S. Capitol complex on January 6, 2021. Although it has been more than 3 years, we still have many unanswered questions. According to the FBI, there are still no suspects as to who planted the devices found near the RNC
all
and
of the
DNC.
video.
I know I share many people's concerns that there has been no update in their investigation. Additionally, the January 6th Select Committee, which was meant to dive into the failures and investigations of January 6th, completely neglected to investigate the devices. Despite former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats spending millions of dollars in their 2 years of the Select Committee, their investigation into the pipe bomb was basically non-existent.
Granny walking through the halls of Congress in between the velvet ropes waving the flag was way more important than
5 times. These references are situational, and as far as I can tell, no investigation was conducted. In contrast, the term President Trump is mentioned in the report 1,901 times. I refuse to follow in the Select Committee's footsteps and conduct a partisan biased investigation. There were genuine and regrettable security failures on January 6. The response to the devices was one of the most alarming. Here are the facts. At approximately 12:42 p.m., the United States Capitol Police received reports of an explosive device found next to the RNC. At roughly 1:05 p.m., a second device was discovered at the DNC, while Vice President-elect Kamala Harris was inside the building. The Vice President-elect came within feet of the device, which, if detonated, could have caused serious bodily harm. CCTV footage indicates the devices were planted the night before by an individual carrying a backpack and wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt, a mask, gloves, glasses, and a pair of Nike Air Max Speed Turf sneakers. Despite the suspect's appearance on numerous U.S. Capitol Police CCTV cameras and the FBI's efforts interviewing over 800 individuals and assessing more than 300 tips, the suspect still remains at large. Unfortunately, the FBI has failed to provide substantive updates on the investigation despite numerous requests from congressional committees. Today, they have declined to participate in our hearing. We are joined by several experts today who will help shed light on the device's response, including U.S. Capitol Police Assistant Chief Sean Gallagher. On January 6, 2021, Assistant Chief Gallagher directed a counter-surveillance team to the DNC following the discovery of device at the RNC. While today we will spend time analyzing the discrepancies of the devices response, ultimately this hearing is meant to help us all move forward. I look forward to your testimony, Assistant Chief Gallagher, and to working together so we can ensure shortcomings of this nature do not happen again. I salute and applaud the U.S. Capitol Police officers who, day in and day out, devote their lives to protecting the members and the halls of Congress and the thousands of visitors who are here every day. We have a lot to dive into this morning, and I now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Torres, for 5 minutes for the purpose of providing an opening statement.
It's an insurrection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too join you
What's
in
the Pearl
welcoming
Harbor?
our witnesses to our hearing. Thank you for your many years of service to our communities. I understand how important and dangerous your jobs truly are, especially when forced to protect us from those who choose to use bombs instead of the ballots to achieve their ends. I also know from many years working as a 911 dispatcher that it is usually premature to assess the law enforcement response to a criminal act while a federal investigation is still active and ongoing. And I am sure that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle know this, which leads me to wonder, what exactly is
So
it
her being
that
a
we're doing
911
here
operator
this
gives her
morning?
some sort of,
Maybe it is to peddle crazy right-wing conspiracy theories about the January 6th pipe bombs spreading in the dark corners of the internet. Or maybe we are here so this subcommittee can once again try to muddle our history, villainize law enforcement, and undo the efforts of the bipartisan January 6th Select Committee, all to distract from the simple fact that the former president and Republican nominee for president orchestrated a corrupt scheme to overturn the results of a free and fair election. When that didn't work, he summoned an armed mob, riled them up, and dispatched them to the Capitol, endangering the lives of everyone working here that day,
because
including
saying,
members of Congress,
go let your voices
not
be
to
heard
mention
and be peaceful,
putting at risk the lives of the outgoing
somehow
and the
dog whistle,
incoming
I
vice
guess.
presidents. I was in the House gallery when the Capitol was breached. It is imperative that all who committed criminal acts that day be held accountable for their actions, including and especially whoever placed pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC. Yet, we must remember
I'd love to see
that
some more
this
videos.
isn't an episode of CSI or Law and Order. We don't get to write our own ending according to what may or may not be
No,
convenient
you guys are writing
for
your
our
own ending,
politics.
all right.
It's frustrating, and I agree 100%, but all critical and sensitive investigations take time. Experts are tasked with not only solving a crime, but also identifying potential characteristics to prevent future threats. From the church bombings that terrorized Black communities throughout the civil rights movement to the bombing in Oklahoma City, federal law enforcement agencies has always had to work tirelessly, sometimes for years and decades, to put together the pieces needed to fully investigate, identify, and prosecute domestic violent
These are
terrorists.
people who can analyze gunpowder and tell you what lot number it
FBI
was
Director
from, who
Christopher
produced
Wray
it.
testified before the January committee, the Judiciary Committee last year.
You're telling me with all the
that
evidence
thi-
with the
that
devices
his
there,
agents
all the
reviewed
video,
40,000
somehow they
video
can't
files
figure
and
any of this
assessed
out.
more than 500 tips. Law enforcement has spent thousands of man-hours investigating this crime, and I have faith that they'll continue to do so until the perpetrator is brought to justice. And while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and I
Telling you the
disagree on
perpetrator is
some
back in their
things,
office
I
working
hope
for
that
the
we can
Fed somewhere.
acknowledge and respect the vital work that law enforcement, including federal law enforcement, does on our behalf. Just last week, House Republicans included cuts to DOJ, the FBI, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, programs in their appropriations bills for fiscal year 2024. If they were serious about this investigation and supported law enforcement efforts, then they wouldn't have cut critical funding for federal law enforcement needed to solve these crimes and others. This committee should not be used as a platform to feed
Hey, Art,
into
what's up,
internet
man? Good morning.
conspiracy theorists.
Hopefully you
Rather,
got your
I
coffee
look
and your
forward
hip
to
waders.
discussing and learning more
You're
about
going to
the
be hip deep in
responsibilities
bullshit.
and complexities of the important work that the FBI and its partners are engaged in from our witnesses. Thank you once again for taking the time to testify at this hearing, and I yield back.
Now recognize the full committee ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes for the purpose of providing an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our witnesses for joining us this morning, and thank you for your long service. And thanks to all the brave men and women of the Capitol Police, the FBI, and other law enforcement for the work they do each and every day to keep the American people safe, which is no easy task, but we're very grateful nonetheless. I must admit I'm perplexed as to why we're here for a public hearing on an active and ongoing federal criminal investigation, especially one in which the FBI has repeatedly told Congress, including members of this subcommittee, that discussing an ongoing investigation would undermine its integrity and make it more difficult to catch the perpetrator. I have to wonder aloud whether that's the goal, to undermine the integrity of an ongoing investigation. I certainly hope not.
No.
But here we are. So while I'm not quite sure
We
what
would
the
all very
precise
much like
goal of this
answers on a
hearing
lot of
is, I
this, you
sincerely
dipshit.
hope it is treated with the seriousness it deserves, and that's not used as a platform to spread conspiracy theories about the FBI and the United States Capitol Police. Throughout this Congress, prominent House Republicans have called to defund agencies like the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. In fact, at least one House Republican sells T-shirts on their website that say, "Defund the FBI." I must point out the irony
Need one of those
of my
shirts.
friends on the other side of the aisle repeatedly criticizing the pace of this FBI investigation, while at the same time proudly attempting to defund the FBI, ATF, and other agencies leading the inquiry. How does it make any sense to criticize the pace of an investigation or the resources allocated to it while simultaneously taking those resources away? I'm not the only one confused. The executive director of the National Fraternal Order of Police summed it up well. To say you support law enforcement and then withhold funding for law enforcement is at variance with common sense, end quote. And it's not just the funding. This entire Congress, House Republicans, have echoed the former president's bizarre accusations that the FBI has been weaponized against the American people and that it cannot be trusted. In fact, before technical difficulties prevented the majority on this subcommittee from doing so, the current speaker admitted that his allies on the subcommittee were blurring faces of rioters in the January 6th footage they released over Capitol Police objections because, quote, "we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the Department of Justice." Imagine that. People who might have broken the law, we don't want to have them retaliated against or to be charged for crimes they may have committed. As I'm sure our witnesses can attest, law enforcement relies heavily on the cooperation of members of the public to perform effective investigations. All leveling these baseless accusations against the FBI does is discourage witnesses and members of the public who may be helpful and have information from cooperating. Don't get me wrong. It's key that the individual who placed, or individuals who placed the pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC ahead of the January 6th attack be caught and prosecuted. And while I appreciate the majority's interest,
not
sure
at all.
This hearing will help advance
Democrats
that
have
goal,
never
or what the
defended,
committee and House
defunding
administration
law
could possibly do legislatively to speed up an active FBI
Certainly not
investigation.
federal law enforcement.
Again, I thank the witnesses
Yeah,
for being
anybody
here, for
else?
your service, for your willingness to answer questions. I'm actually looking forward to your testimony. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. This hearing is to review the handling of two serious incidents that affects the safety and security of Republicans and Democrats and visitors to this city. I was sure that this could and really should be a bipartisan hearing, and I hope that it will be. The FBI has been investigating this.
This has
for 3
zero chance of being
years.
bipartisan. Most
This
of
hearing
it.
is not about the FBI nor its investigation. It's about the response and the process of responding to 3 very dangerous devices that provide an imminent risk to people here at the Capitol. The FBI was invited to be here today, but they declined. But I believe we've assembled an impressive panel of experts that can help us
Why
break
would
down
the
the response.
FBI decline to be there?
This hearing, this is not about the FBI investigation, but this is about something that this committee does have oversight of, which is the U.S. Capitol Police and law enforcement that do respond and how they respond to incidents like this. Without objection, all other members' opening statements will be made
That's
part of the
another
hearing,
good
and
point,
they are
G23.
submitted.
Well, I'll take that
if
back.
They
They
are
did
submitted
want to
committee clerk by
defund them
5 p.m. today. Pursuant
with
to
state
paragraph
funds,
B
and they wanted
of
to
your
cut
Rule
police
6, the
forces,
witnesses
and they
will
did
please
that
stand and
locally.
raise your right hand.
But they did that locally so that they would have to take federal funds to
Do you
survive.
solemnly
so that
swear
they
or
could
affirm that the
federalize.
testimony that you are about
So,
to give is the truth,
a little
the whole truth,
little
and
play
nothing
there.
but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. You may be seated, and thank you all. I will now introduce our witnesses.
You and me both,
Our
Ag.
first
That's a good way
witness
to put
is U.S. Capitol Police Assistant Chief for Uniformed Operations, Mr. Sean Gallagher. Thank you for your long-term service to the U.S. Capitol Police and the members here. Assistant Chief Gallagher joined the Capitol Police in 2001, and on January 6, 2021, was Deputy Chief for Protective Services Bureau. We're grateful that you are here today, Assistant Chief Gallagher, and we look forward to hearing your perspective regarding the law enforcement response and how we can improve in the future. Our next witness is Mr. Sean Dennis, the co-founder, president, and CEO of the U.S. Bomb Technician Association. Mr. Dennis formerly served as the Bomb Squad Commander and Special Operations Sergeant for the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office in Centennial, Colorado. I hope I got that name pronounced correctly. Mr. Dennis has been involved in the bomb technician and explosives community for a quarter century, over 25 years. Our next witness is Mr. Michael Keim, a former Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority head, K-9 detection trainer. Did I get that right? Close enough, huh? Mr. Keim has spent over 12 years as an explosive and K-9 trainer and handler and has supervised thousands of sweeps for explosive devices. Since the U.S. Secret Service, who supervised the security sweep at the DNC, was not available to testify before the subcommittee today, we are looking forward to hearing Mr. Keim's perspective on the K-9 security sweep of the DNC, what went right, and what possibly may have gone wrong. Our final witness is Mr. Barry Black, a big fan of your first name, by the way. He is a former FBI special agent and master bomb technician. Mr. Black was a first responder to the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, 1996 Atlanta Olympic bombing, and the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks, among others. In 2022, Mr. Black was awarded as an honorary U.S. Air Force commander for his work with security forces and military working dogs. As I said, we have a very impressive panel of experts that I think can help navigate us here today. We appreciate the witnesses being here today and look forward to your testimony. As a reminder, we have read your written statements and it will appear in the full hearing record. Under Committee Rule 9, you are to limit your oral presentation to a brief summary of your written statement unless I extend the time period in consultation with Ranking Member Torres. Please remember to turn on your microphones using the button in front of you so that members can hear. If you don't, I will very politely remind you to turn your microphone on. When you begin to speak, the light on the timer in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, it will turn yellow. And when the red light comes on, your 5 minutes has expired. You don't have to stop mid-sentence, but we would ask that you please wrap up your statements once that red light has illuminated. I now recognize Assistant Chief Gallagher for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Loudermilk, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to testify today about the January 6th pipe bombs. The department greatly appreciates the committee's continued support of the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police who courageously carry out their duties of protecting the members of Congress, staff, visitors, and the entire Capitol complex and legislative process each and every day. Congress's support has been invaluable as we continue to work on building on the lessons learned from January 6th, while also meeting the dramatic workload increases in increasing volatile threat environment. As you know, the United States Capitol Police is a unique federal law enforcement agency. We patrol a campus that is completely open. The public has a constitutional right to visit, protest, and petition their representatives on Capitol grounds. And our officers and civilians work 24/7 to keep you safe, whether you're here on Capitol Hill or when you travel to your home districts.
Your officers
Our
work
mission is
awful
vast
hard
and
to
our
instigate a bunch of
responsibilities
shit.
have
What they
expanded
did.
immensely over the years. The threat picture has morphed from securing our buildings to the threat of a 9/11 scenario to the lone offender, and now to an unprecedented increase in threats to members and their families. On January 6, 2021, however, that safety was threatened in a number of ways, including the placement of 2 pipe bombs, one in an alley behind the Capitol Hill Club on Capitol grounds, which is adjacent to the Republican National Committee, and one at the Democratic National Committee, which is just off the Capitol grounds. I'd like to walk through the events of that day with regards to the pipe bombs, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. On January 6, 2021, I was in charge of our Protective Services Bureau as a deputy chief. Our Protective Services Bureau is our Dignitary Protection Division, our IICD, and our Investigation Division. On January 6th at approximately 12:44, one of our uniform officers was notified by Republican National Committee security that there appeared to be a pipe bomb located at the rear of the Capitol Hill Club in an alley. A command post was established by 12:49 and the device was located during a search of the area. Around the same time, one of our K-9 technicians identified a pickup truck parked directly across the street from the RNC with a weapon in plain view and the truck appearing to be weighed down. This pickup truck was parked directly across the street from the RNC, and assets from our department's hazardous device section, more commonly known as our bomb squad, responded and began to assess the device at approximately 12:52. The pipe bomb was eventually disrupted by our bomb squad and cleared at approximately 3 p.m. The earlier pickup truck that I mentioned that our K-9 technician located was declared suspicious, and members of our bomb squad then began to assess that vehicle at approximately 3:25. This vehicle was found to contain 11 Molotov cocktails, smokeless powder canisters, OC spray, canisters full of ammunition, a rifle, a shotgun, a handgun, multiple machetes, and a crossbow. The owner of that vehicle was later identified, arrested, and is ultimately serving 47 months in federal prison. The overall scene at the RNC was cleared at approximately 6:30 p.m. As a result of the discovery of the pipe bomb at the RNC, members of our department's counter-surveillance unit, as they have been trained to do, began to push out and search for other locations for either suspicious packages, suspicious people, or similar devices. At approximately 1 p.m., the department requested Metro Transit to have trains bypass the Capitol South Metro due to the presence of the pipe bomb. At 1:07 p.m., approximately 23 minutes after the Capitol Police was alerted of the pipe bomb at the RNC, 2 of our counter-surveillance agents located what appeared to be a similar pipe bomb underneath a bench in front of the DNC.
Dude, the one who found the original pipe bomb was a Fed.
At about 1:11 p.m., and officers
Nobody else saw that
began to
shit.
clear residences and businesses in the area. The scene at the DNC was cleared at approximately 4:36 after our bomb squad disrupted and cleared the pipe bombs. The FBI then took possession of both devices and all evidence and is the lead agency on the entire investigation. It is my understanding that both of these devices were fully functional and viable pipe bombs. However, it is unclear whether they would have gone off on their own had they not been rendered safe by our bomb squad. As I noted earlier, our bomb squad successfully handled an extremely dangerous
These people can
situation
tell
on
whether
January 6th.
something's meant to go
But
off
since
with a
that
signal
date,
coming
we
to it or
determined
whether it's
additional
time.
improvements are necessary. Thus, the department has continued to seek ways to improve our operations, overhauling many of our policies, processes, and implementing numerous changes related to civil disturbance unit, intelligence gathering, operational planning, training,
Let 'em listen. I'll be back.
incident command,
Time for
and
more
internal
coffee.
communications, as well as a host of other areas. Since January 6th, our bomb squad technicians have begun receiving specialized advanced training from the ATF's Certified Explosive Specialist Program, and the department has a bomb technician training with an elite FBI team, which is one of only 14 such teams in the country now. Our bomb squad is also participating in the Raven Challenge, which includes numerous public safety squads and military EOD teams performing realistic operational scenarios. Our bomb squad remains one of the largest and one of the most capable squads in the entire country. And the changes noted above will ensure that the department is even better prepared to respond to any similar incidents. Finally, I want to make sure that I note, and this is important, I am extremely proud that none of these 2 pipe bombs, nor any of the Molotov cocktails found that day, exploded or harmed anybody. This is without a doubt directly due to the outstanding efforts of not only our bomb squad, but other members of the U.S. Capitol Police. We now know, based on video surveillance, that both of these devices have been were placed the night before on January 5th, 2021. While there is vague footage of the suspect, to date, nobody has been arrested for the offense, despite a $500,000 reward by the FBI and many hours of hard work by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. I do hope one day that the person or persons responsible for planting these 2 explosive devices on Capitol grounds will be brought to justice by the FBI. The department thanks the committee for its support, and we greatly appreciate our continued partnership with Congress. I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Loudermilk, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity today to provide some background on the response to improvised explosive devices in the United States. My name is Sean Dennis. I'm a retired Sheriff Sergeant and Bomb Squad Commander from the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office outside of Denver, Colorado. After retirement, I worked for the Transportation Security Administration as an explosive specialist at the Denver International Airport. It was during this time that I, along with a small group of military and public safety bomb technicians with similar backgrounds, recognized the need for an organization to support the bomb technician community. We felt underrepresented despite the critical role we were playing to keep our homeland safe. In 2016, we formed the United States Bomb Technician Association, known as the USBTA. And today we represent over 5,000 active military and public safety bomb technicians by educating those in positions of leadership on the desperate needs of this community. USBTA also conducts technology training exercises to identify technology and training gaps that exist within the bomb technician community. In addition, USBTA conducts research involving counter-IED tools and equipment, along with research of characterizing hazardous homemade explosives. The lessons learned from our training and research are used to give the EOD warfighter and public safety bomb technician the capabilities to render safe IEDs in a safe, efficient, and effective manner. Some of the critical areas in the bomb technician community that we would like to highlight today include: 1, training and certifications. Public safety bomb technicians receive basic training and certification at the FBI Hazardous Devices School in Huntsville, Alabama, consisting of a 6-week curriculum. Bomb technicians then receive a variety of continued education and training from various U.S. government entities, such as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the FBI, and the DHS Office for Bombing Prevention. The National Bomb Squad Commanders Advisory Board provides national guidelines for bomb technicians to conduct 24 hours of monthly training in addition to the required recertification with the FBI every 3 years to ensure competency. Furthermore, bomb squads and their technicians seek out professional organizations and industry events to increase their knowledge and strengthen their skill sets. 2, incident response. Bomb technicians face several challenges when called to an incident in which a suspect package or hazardous material has been identified. First and foremost, they are facing the unknown. Only the person responsible for construction and placement knows how these device functions and who the target is and what the motive is behind their malicious intentions or malicious actions. Bomb squads may only have minutes to determine those factors for the preservation of life. And lastly, challenges upon arrival. Some of the life-threatening challenges faced by the bomb technicians may include the following: the initial intelligence. First responders' assessment provided to the responding bomb technicians may only provide a portion of the information required. Determination of the environment, permissive or hostile. Identification of single or multiple devices. Potential of secondary devices, on-scene targeting of first responders. Location of device placement by bomb maker. Standoff area densely populated with bystanders and civilians. Inability to evacuate civilians in a timely manner. Having the appropriate equipment available to handle the call. Poor weather conditions. adequate personnel to perform appropriate render-safe operations, possibility of remote detonation by the bomb maker, limited render-safe options based on surrounding critical infrastructure, the inability to remain remote. Remember, if you can see the device can see you. Communications amongst team members and command staff. Although not present during the events that took place on January 6, 2021, I'm aware of some of the challenges the bomb technicians might have faced, as I have experienced similar challenges during my time as the bomb squad commander at the sheriff's office. The job of a bomb technician is inherently dangerous and stressful. When we are called upon, the situation has already risen to a level that most don't have to face in their normal lives. The decisions you make in a very short period of time have consequences that can cost your life and the lives of the innocent around you. There is no opportunity for do-overs or time for tabling the options for further discussions. There is a term in our community that is posted outside our doors of our training classroom to remind us: initial success or total failure. The challenges faced by the Capitol Police Bomb Squad on that January 6th event were extraordinary, as they are required to navigate the render safe of multiple devices in and around critical infrastructures, building, and general population, in addition to thousands actively protesting within their scene. By all accounts, it is, in my opinion, the bomb squad dealt with these challenges professionally and rendered safe the device safe of avoiding harm or injury to themselves or others, and were able to collect forensic evidence to assist in determining who is responsible. I'm proud of the bomb squad community that we represent, and we'll continue to advocate for their needs to ensure they have the appropriate resources, personnel, training, and technology, and when they are faced with these extraordinary challenges, in keeping our community safe. Thank you, and I yield back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Mr. Keim, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mike Keim. I'm a retired 25-year veteran of the K-9 Unit Metro Transit Police Department, Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority. I began my career in 1992. I spent the last approximately 12 years of my career training explosive detections, K-9 teams, the handlers and the dogs. In this role, I had the responsibility of training the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority Police Department explosive detection dogs from the time they were acquired through their certification and utilization, maintaining training records for both handlers and dogs. During my career, I've conducted or supervised in excess of 35,000 explosive sweeps, real life and training scenarios, utilizing explosive detection dogs throughout Washington, D.C. Metro Rail system and stations. Many of my friends and colleagues from my 25-year career responded on January 6, 2021. I'm here today to answer any questions you may have or provide any information that this committee deems useful. I'd like to thank the chairman, Loudermilk, and as well as all the other committee members for your help in law enforcement. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Keim. We appreciate the time management there. And with that length of testimony, you could become a very popular witness for a lot of committees here. Mr. Black, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Loudermilk, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Last week, I was asked to consider the status of the investigation regarding the subject that left 2 devices before the RNC and DNC back in January of 2021. I retired in 2019, so I wasn't present that day. But as a master bomb technician, a master police instructor, founding member of the FBI's evidence response team, worldwide rapid deployment team, and having been a first responder at numerous high-profile events, I'm familiar with the way bombing investigations are conducted. After I retired, I took a position as an instructor at a leading forensic science institute where I teach classes on crime scene processing and the forensic investigation of mass disasters. And one thing I tell my students, as Ms. Torres alluded to, the CSI effect just doesn't exist. That's a product of television shows that depict trace evidence and forensic science as a silver bullet that's omnipresent and can almost immediately point to a specific subject out of the universe of possible subjects. Oftentimes, forensic evidence is just unavailable, and investigators have to rely on other types of investigative techniques. Many times, that is directly related to the identity of the suspect. By way of example, Eric Rudolph, the Olympic bomber, placed 4 devices over a 2-year period Despite forensic examinations during that time, his identity remained elusive. It took eyewitnesses to come forward that said they saw a suspicious man in a specific type of truck just prior to the blast in Birmingham that killed a police officer. It was those tips that focused the investigation on Eric Rudolph. Similarly, Ted Kaczynski was active for 17 years. Despite thorough forensic examinations of over a dozen devices during that period, his identity remained elusive, primarily because Mr. Kaczynski went to great lengths to obscure forensic evidence. It wasn't until his manifesto was published that his brother provided a tip. That tip is what brought focus to Mr. Kaczynski, not the years of forensic examinations. I once responded to the bombing of an Air Force recruiting station. As we were processing that crime scene, we recovered pieces of a pipe bomb and a specialized, customized timing device. As we collected that evidence and were preparing it for submission to the laboratory, again, witness came forward and indicated they saw a suspicious man driving a unique red racing motorcycle before and after the blast. Using Air Force personnel records cross-matched with DMV records, we developed a suspect, and within 24 hours, were able to execute a search warrant at that individual's home and recovered 2 fully viable time bombs. Forensics were used to tie those 2 time bombs to the evidence recovered from the scene, but it was the witness testimony that expeditiously pointed to that suspect. As for the January 6th suspect, it appears that there was a conscious effort.
Yeah, I'm back, but I got to throw some food down my neck real fast.
Identification difficult. From what I've seen in public record, it appears that the IEDs themselves were comprised of very simple,
all right, take it easy, brother.
Very common components that are available most anywhere. That makes it difficult to trace the source of those components, and thereby makes it difficult to determine who purchased those components. I understand hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews have been conducted. Tens of thousands of video images have been reviewed, hundreds of tips. Sadly, sometimes cases go cold. Once the forensic evidence has been exhausted, once all viable leads have been covered, new information is required.
Tell you what, these guys are boring the shit out of me.
For public information and a $500,000 reward may one day.
And all they're doing is a giant commercial for Congress. Let's swap back over
and
to.
At that time, I'm certain the dedicated men and women of the FBI and our law enforcement partners will thoroughly exhaust those.
This other hearing for a little bit.
Conclusion. So, thank you for your time.
The tail on the donkey in this wild goose chase, all of these silly games, Donald Trump entertains authoritarian hustler Viktor Orban at Mar-a-Lago for the weekend, and Orban comes out to declare that if we indeed sleepwalk into another Trump presidency, Trump will, quote, not give a single penny to Ukraine. That's what all of this is about. It's about trying to pull the wool over the eyes of America, because the tyrants and dictators of the world are on the march today. So who wins with this ludicrous, embarrassing spectacle? Orban wins, Putin wins, Xi wins, the tyrants of the world win. They have one more reason to celebrate Donald Trump and his cult followers who've completely lost their way. They're looking for high crimes and misdemeanors. Now they appoint themselves amateur memory specialists, and that's what they pounce on the President of the United States about. America faces a choice between democracy and tyranny. And the president laid it out at Valley Forge, and he laid it out in the State of the Union. Will America stand on the side of people struggling against fascist aggression? Will we stand with the people of Ukraine against Vladimir Putin?
Everything's going good, man.
Whose filthy war has meant the kidnapping of thousands of Ukrainian children, the murder, the slaughter of thousands of Ukrainian civilians, and the attack on an independent sovereign democracy. But we're not working on that today. We're not standing up for democracy and human rights and international law around the world. No, we're trying to play memory detectives, to parse the language of a president who the whole world got to see at the State of the Union address directly address the real questions of our time. And it is democracy versus dictatorship. And all of the autocrats and the theocrats,
democracy is a
all of the
dictatorship,
kleptocrats of the
jackass.
world are together in league against American democracy, and we have to stand up for American democracy against these stupid games. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The chairman of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Comer, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the Oversight Committee interviews, we've identified a number of White House employees who were involved in the mishandling of classified documents under the leadership of President Biden. Special Counsel Hur, can you please tell us approximately how many current and former White House employees you interviewed related to your investigation?
Chairman Comer, I don't have that figure immediately at hand. Of course, it was a subset of the 173 interviews that we conducted during our investigation.
Your report indicates that one of those former White House employees who you interviewed was Dana Remus. Is that correct?
We did interview Ms. Remus.
Ms. Remus was President Biden's former White House counsel, correct?
She was President Obama's former White House counsel.
I'm sorry, President Obama's White House counsel. Yes. Related to Ms. Remus, in your report on page 257, you wrote, in May 2022, White House counsel Dana Remus undertook an effort to retrieve Mr. Biden's files from the Penn Biden Center. Remus described the original purpose of that effort as gathering materials to prepare for potential congressional inquiries about the Biden family's activities during the period from 2017 to 2019. Now, it seems odd to me that Dana Remus and Joe Biden's personal lawyers were obtaining documents related to potential congressional inquiries about the Biden family activities when Joe Biden has publicly claimed he had no involvement with his family's business dealings. Can you provide more information about why Dana Remus, a government employee, was retrieving Joe Biden's documents from the Penn Biden Center?
Chairman, I am able to tell you and clarify information that appears in the report about relevant, significant sources of information. I am not in a position to be able to go beyond that.
When you interviewed President Biden, did you ask him what documents he possessed at Penn Biden Center that could be related to a potential congressional inquiry about his family's activities?
We asked President Biden a wealth of questions about all of the different sets of classified materials that were recovered during the course of our investigation.
Did anything pertain to inquiry of President Biden that you recall?
If there are more specific aspects of it that you
Right.
have in
No,
mind,
no,
Chairman,
don't pet my
that would be
face.
helpful to me.
Interest pertaining to his family's influence peddling activities?
If it's helpful, Chairman, Appendix A does list in table chart form a brief description of all of the marked classified documents that were recovered in our investigation.
We intend to interview Ms. Remus, and the recording or transcript of your interview would be highly relevant to our future questioning of her. Can you confirm that you did, in fact, record her in your interview?
It was our practice to record the interviews that we conducted, Chairman Comer.
Additionally, in the course of the investigation, the Oversight Committee learned from a Penn Biden Center employee that Annie Tomasini,
Let's get that
White House
Biden interview.
employee, visited the Penn Biden Center in 2021. Did you interview Annie Tomasini in the course of your investigation?
Chairman, we do not, the report does not reflect that specific.
Here's Gary. What's up,
What
brother?
I can tell you is that the report does
Morning.
reflect that we interviewed the Director of Oval Office Operations, and one of the places that's reflected is footnote 973.
Okay. The Oversight Committee interviewed Kathy Chung, a Department of Defense employee and former assistant to Vice President Biden, and learned that Ms. Chung visited the Biden Penn Center in June 2022 after being contacted by White House counsel in May 2022. This was months before classified documents were allegedly found in November 2022. Did you interview Kathy Chung in the course of your investigation?
Chairman, I believe that the substance relating to the subject that you're asking about appears on page 259 of the report. And while the name Kathy Chung does not appear in the text of the report, there are references to interviews of an executive assistant, including at footnote 988.
The Oversight Committee also learned from its interviews with Penn Biden Center employees and Kathy Chung that Dana Remus, Anthony Bernal, and Ashley Williams, all at the time White House employees, then visited the Penn Biden Center on different occasions before the alleged discovery of classified materials in November 2022. Did you interview these individuals during your investigation?
We interviewed many individuals, and I can assure you, Chairman, that it was a priority of ours to interview all the relevant sources of information about these documents, how they got there, who knew about them, and who accessed them.
Can you, so again, they were all recorded, is that correct? So there would be recordings.
It was our practice to interview recordings, yes, sir.
How many White House employees visited the
someone
Penn
do a
Biden
FOIA
Center before
request and actually
classified
get that
materials
shit?
were reportedly discovered there in November 2022?
I don't have
According
any,
to the White House.
Well, they
sir,
will
I don't have an
never
exact count
release that.
of
How many visits to the Penn Biden Center were made by either White House employees or President Biden's personal attorneys before the official discovery of documents in November 2022?
I don't have that figure at hand, but that should be detailed in Chapter 14 of the report, sir.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes. Before Mr. Hur, anytime you need a break, just if you need a break, let us know, because we're going to go a while, as you well know.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Jackson Lee's recognized.
Yeah, I expect them to take a long time with this hearing.
Mr. Hur, good morning.
Good morning.
The Republicans here asked
Oh, here we go with the mental
transcripts. Co-Chair Jordan has yet to release 90+ transcripts from our interviews with those, if they are to be released to the American people, is the question. My question to you is, you decided, based on the facts, not to prosecute or indict or bring forward charges against the President of the United States, the sitting president, Joseph Biden. Is that correct?
That was my judgment.
This investigation
Why?
was
Well,
independent
because he's a
and
feeble
thorough.
old
Is
man.
that correct?
Yes.
We have heard from our Republican colleagues who are grasping at straws allegations that President Biden was treated lightly in this investigation. But just a plain reading of this report completely refutes that argument. There was no two-tiered system of justice. There was only a lack of evidence
classified
against
documents from the
President
time he
Biden.
was a senator.
Mr. Hur,
through
your
the time he
office
was
and the
vice
FBI
president,
undertook
improperly stored, shared them with
extensive
people,
investigation
and this guy
into
said
Mr.
he
Biden's
had the
handling of
charges, he
classified
just
information.
refused to
And of the
bring them
classified
because
documents the FBI
Biden would have
seized,
looked
correct?
like a
Correct.
senile old
In
man
your
to a
investigation,
jury.
you conducted 173
That doesn't exonerate
interviews
Biden. It
of
says Biden committed
147
these crimes. He
witnesses,
just
correct?
refused
That
to
is
bring
correct.
charges.
And President Biden himself was one of those witnesses, correct?
Correct.
For at least 5 hours or more.
Correct.
And President Biden
please release the
engaged
video
in
of
this
Biden's
interview voluntarily.
Correct.
And the interview with President Biden lasted more than 5 hours. I've said that. That's correct.
Correct.
And the interview, and it occurred the day, which all should know, after the horrific attack, October 7th, 2023, Hamas attack in Israel, according to a letter from the White House counsel. Is that correct?
The interview spans 2 days, October 8th and October 9th.
With the president having to be in and out to deal with an international crisis, and after the interview, he provided handwritten answers to additional questions, correct?
Congresswoman, I don't recall the president being in and out during our interview to handle the internet.
Let me go on. And President Biden allowed investigators to search his private houses. Is that correct?
He did consent to the search of his residence.
Remember,
And your
after his
investigation
staffers
collected
went and removed
7
a bunch of
million
materials.
documents for review in your investigation. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this included emails, text messages, photographs, videos, toll records, and other materials from both classified and unclassified sources.
Correct.
Correct? And you referred or reviewed President Biden's handwritten notes as well, correct?
Correct.
And you coordinated with the multiple government agencies to organize and complete your investigation, correct?
We consulted with numerous agencies to conduct
And that
classification
included-
reviews of evidence that was seized during the investigation.
Right. And that included working with national security experts in the intelligence community to carefully analyze each classified document that was obtained.
With respect to marked classified documents, that's correct. We submitted excerpts from the former vice president's notebooks for classification review.
And if agencies reviewed classified material and gave it different levels of classification, you classified it as a higher level for the purposes of your investigation to be thorough, correct?
That is reflected in appendices A
Thank
and
you.
B.
The FBI requested classification review from each identified agency accordingly for documents where multiple agencies had equities. The special counsel's office used the highest level of classification identified by an agency as the current classification of the document. Let me go on. Attorney General Garland appointed you as special counsel over the matter on January 12, 2023, correct?
Correct.
He authorized you to
We all
investigate
got so
Mr.
much
Biden's
faith in Attorney
possession
General
of the
Garland.
classified documents, including possible unauthorized removal and retention of classified documents or other records
Correct.
as, at the Penn Biden Center, President Biden's home, Delaware, as well as any matters that arose from the initial investigation or may arise directly from the special counsel investigation. Is that correct?
I believe that accurately reflects the language of the appointment order.
So you operated an independent investigation for about a year, which you just stated that you had adequate resources to complete, in which you conducted 173 interviews, included with President
His
Biden
career
himself.
is in the
You
Department
reviewed
of
7 million
Justice.
documents, including
It's not
President
an
Biden's
independent
personal
review.
records, and searched his home thoroughly. And in this thorough, lengthy investigation, you did not uncover
If you think
enough
this guy
evidence to
actually had the
recommend
freedom to
prosecution
charge
against the president.
President
Is that
Biden,
correct?
you're an
That is
idiot.
my judgment.
And if you had found enough evidence to warrant prosecution, did you feel free, unrestrained by the Attorney General appointed by President Biden to make such a recommendation to the Attorney General?
I was aware of the Office of Legal Counsel policy right now, prohibiting sitting presidents from being charged with federal crimes. But apart from that, what I can tell you, Congresswoman, is that the investigative steps that we took were my own, the judgment was my own, and the words in the report are my own.
And you would have
What's even worse than that,
Miss-
Giz,
Regular order, Mr. Chairman.
because he laid out that there was wrongdoing. He laid out that Biden did have the classified documents. He just said we're not charging him
Without objection.
because he would look like a sympathetic old man to a jury.
February 8th, the White House question, Mr. President, why did you share
So they admit that
classified
they found
information
it.
with your
They admit
ghostwriter?
Biden broke the law. They
President,
admit Biden
I did not share
mishandled
classified
documents.
information.
And
I
then
did
he
not
shared
share
them
it.
with people
I
he shouldn't have shared them
guarantee
with.
I did not.
They just said we're not
That's
charging
not
him.
true, is it, Mr. Hur?
That is inconsistent with the findings based on the evidence in my report.
Yeah, so it's a lie, is just what regular people would say, right? Yeah, all right. So the next one. And all the stuff that was in my home was in filing cabinets that were either locked
Yeah, it
or
makes it
able to be
far more
locked.
palatable.
That wasn't true either, was it?
That was inconsistent with the findings of our investigation.
Another lie, people might say, right? Because
Barton, I
what
need
you
that on
put
a
in your report was
soundtrack for
among the
every
places
time
Mr.
she
Biden's
starts
lawyers found
talking.
classified
I
documents in the
definitely need it.
garage was a damaged open box. So here's what I'm understanding, right? As Mr. Armstrong laid out, you find in your report that the elements of a federal criminal violation are met, but then you apply this senile cooperator theory that because Joe Biden cooperated and the elevator doesn't go to the top floor, you don't think you get a conviction. And I actually think you get to the right answer in that. I don't think Biden should have been charged. Don't think Trump should have been charged. But under like the senile cooperator theory, isn't it frustrating that Biden continues to go out and lie about the basic facts of the report that lay out a federal criminal violation?
Congressman, I need to disagree with at least one thing that you said, which is that I found that all of the elements were met. One of the elements of the relevant mishandling statute is the intent element. And what my report reflects is my judgment that based on the evidence, I would not be able to prove beyond
Biden
reasonable doubt
admitted
to a jury
he took it.
that intent
He
element.
said it was
Right,
his
but the
property.
reason you have that doubt is the senile cooperator theory. The fact that Joe Biden is so inept in responding that you can't prove the intent, which again, I don't quibble with that conclusion, but it's frustrating to be like, oh, well, this guy's not getting treated the same way as Trump because the elevator's not going to the top floor, so we can't prove intent. While at the same time, Biden goes out there at the White House and says, well, you know, he just blatantly lies. And what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not Biden's lying because he's still so senile, he hasn't read your report, or whether it's a little craftier and a little more devious and perhaps a little more intentional than we might otherwise think. So I also want to go to this Biden Penn Center. Like, did it give concern to you that the Biden Penn Center, where all this classified stuff was being mishandled, was being floated by foreign governments?
Yeah, Giz, absolutely.
Congressman, we were concerned with getting to the bottom of all of the classified documents that were recovered during the course of our
But what bothers me is that the money that was paying for the place where the documents were being inappropriately held, it was the Chinese and it was other foreign countries. Did that play into your analysis? Did you look into the $1 billion in foreign funding sources at the Biden Center at UPenn, for example?
Congressman, we conducted a thorough, impartial, and fair investigation.
Did you look into the funding?
Very, very concerned with getting to the bottom of all the relevant questions relating to the recovered documents.
Did you look into the fact that the Chinese were floating the place where this guy was keeping the documents unsecure? Yes or no?
Congressman, to the extent that we identified evidence that was relevant and significant to our investigation, we put it in our report.
Okay, it seemed relevant to me, maybe not to you. Another thing that seemed relevant to me is this ghostwriter, right? So the ghostwriter purposefully deletes this evidence that seems to be like show culpability of Biden's crimes, and you don't charge him? Why did you not charge the ghostwriter with obstructing justice and deleting evidence?
Well, for a number of reasons that are laid out in the report, but in brief, Congressman, yes, when we interviewed the ghostwriter, he did tell us, and I'm trying to get the exact language, that one of the things on his mind, one of the things he was aware of, was that I had been appointed special counsel and was conducting an investigation.
Right. So he didn't. Just so everybody knows, the ghostwriter didn't delete the recordings just as a matter of happenstance. Ghostwriter has recordings of Biden making admissions of crimes. He then learns that you've been appointed. He then deletes the information that is the evidence, and you don't charge him.
That is reflected in the report, and one of the reasons.
Like, what does somebody have to do to get charged with obstruction of justice by you? If like deleting the evidence of crimes doesn't count, what would meet the standard?
So, Congressman, as we
you have to be a Democrat, and
one
then
of
it
the
doesn't
things
matter.
that Mr. Zwanitzer did not delete was transcripts of the recordings that he had created that included inculpatory evidence relating to Mr. Biden.
Oh, so if you destroy some evidence but not other evidence, that somehow absolves you of the evidence you destroy? Like, here's what I see. Zwanniger should have been charged, wasn't. Biden and Trump should have been treated equally. They weren't. And that is the double standard that I think a lot of Americans are concerned about. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
good
Chairman.
job,
Mr. Hur,
Cohen.
thank you for being here. A little confused about this hearing. Mr. Raskin laid out the big picture, what we should be concerned about, but in the more limited picture, Director Mueller had an investigation. He's our most famous recent special prosecutor, and he found sufficient evidence to say there was a connection between Russia and the Trump campaign. And it supported a criminal prosecution if you were not president. You found there was no evidence to support a criminal prosecution. And the story here is simple. President Biden identified classified
Oh
documents.
man, now we
and
get to hear
other
from
places
Hank
in federal
Johnson in a little
archives
bit
about
too.
them. The Independent Department of Justice under Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed you, a former Trump political appointee, as special counsel to fully investigate these circumstances and authorized you to prosecute criminal misconduct. You declined to prosecute because you found insufficient evidence of a crime. Case closed. It makes really a perfect case where you did your job, Mr. Garland did his job, and unlike Mr. Barr, he didn't interfere. Did Mr. Garland ask you to change your report at all?
He did not, sir.
Didn't redact a thing?
No, sir.
Like Mr. Barr did, he redacted everything and made the Mueller report look like 180 degrees different than what it was. Mr. Garland did right, and you did right, and I commend each of you. The Department of Justice is independent and allows the special counsels to investigate and prosecute the facts if it's supported. Joe Biden's actions in handling classified materials is similar to most other former presidents and vice presidents. The exception is Donald Trump. So let's start with some yes or no questions. Did you receive any pressure from Mr. Garland or his staff to make any specific factual finding or legal conclusion?
No.
Did you receive the resources necessary to carry out your duties?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that you were treated differently with regard to independence or resources than other DOJ special prosecutors?
No.
Based on your experience as special counsel, do you have any reason to believe the Attorney General was improperly directing, pressuring, or interfering with Jack Smith or his work?
I have really
Yeah,
not have the
Gaz,
basis
that
to answer
is
that.
absolutely amazing to me, Giz.
Your declination,
Absolutely amazing.
which we treat as thoughtful and
The
apolitical.
people believe this
we
clown
should
shit.
treat prosecutorial decisions by Jack Smith the same way, to the best of your knowledge.
Again,
They're
I
little
really do not have
NPCs,
the
non-playable
sufficient
characters. They get their
information.
updates from the
There's
media, and
investigation
that's
to provide any
all they
comment
do.
on it.
Let me ask you this. If President Biden, in his testimony to you, knew the exact date, January 20, whatever it was, 2009, when he became vice president, and the day when he left being vice president, January the 20th, I guess the first would have been January 20th again, 2009, and then January 20 in 2017. He knew those dates exactly right. And if he knew the exact date and the instant that Beau Biden died, would that have changed your decision to not to
Yeah, Barton.
prosecution?
The same people.
Sir, I cannot engage in hypotheticals about.
You're
what
not
my
wearing a
decision would be
mask.
with
You're
different
killing
facts.
grandma. If you don't
What I
get
did
the
was make a
jab, you're
decision based
killing
on the facts
grandma.
and the circumstances that I was presented with, and we did identify during our
But
investigation.
it appears to me, and I think it would appear to the
Joe
American public,
Biden's just
that this
doing a
minor
great job as president. The
discrepancies
economy
as far
is
as dates
roaring.
after a long period of time was not the basis. It was not the basis for your decision to decline. to
Inflation's
prosecute. It was the fact
down.
that you didn't have the facts. That he acted differently than Trump. That he voluntarily provided the documents, that he complied with the Justice Department, that he didn't try to obstruct justice. Those were the reasons you didn't prosecute him, not because he missed a few dates.
Congressman, my reasons for my declination decision are set out in my report, and I stand by the words in the report, sir.
Well, thank you. And I think I'm encompassing them in my what I'm saying to you is that there was not anything to do with his memory why he wasn't chosen to be, you chose not to indict him.
He said it
was
in
the
his
difference in the
report.
facts in the case and how he
Cohen,
dealt with it.
you
The fact is,
numbnuts.
Mr. Biden sat through 5 hours and he did an admirable job. And he did an outstanding job in the State of the Union, laying out the case for the future of America.
Dude, he needed to be
For the
drug
class,
tested after that
for
State of the
for
Union to
democracy
see what
around
all
the
they had him
world,
hopped
for
up on.
standing up to the Russians, not bending down to them. That's what's important. Not if you can be like on the $64,000 question, assuming it was legit, and answering every single question correctly. That's not what you need to be president. To be president, you need to have
Well,
values.
General
You
Flynn,
need to
they
have
try to ruin his
understanding of what
life because he
values
didn't
America
remember
has
something.
and needs to
So
maintain
there's
to
that.
keep the world safe and peaceful. That's dealing with Ukraine. That's dealing with different
Plenty of
people like
people in
Netanyahu
court
and Israel to
cases
try to get something done that's correct.
have been
That's
charged with
what
perjury
Joe
because they
Biden
couldn't
does. And
remember
understanding
a
Social
date
Security and Medicare,
in a
Medicaid
deposition.
are important institutions that help seniors, not senile people. I mean, I really object to that comment. People say
Tore
he's not,
town, you
nobody
damn
suggests
right
he's
about that.
senile, and that's disrespectful of senior people with any kind of memory disability. Lots of seniors have memory disability, but they're not senile, and to do such was shameful. Joe Biden.
Yeah, I could
is
use
a
some too a lot of
competent,
days.
good president who
Chairman.
knows American values. I turn.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hur, I'd like to start off by
Yeah, you're
by
right
thanking
about
you
that,
for
Barton.
a year of
I mean,
hard
there
work
is
and
a
comprehensive
percentage
report.
of us who are actually not
I'm going to try
complete
not
NPC
to
morons.
provide testimony, as some people on both sides are.
there ain't
or
enough
provide
of us.
conclusions, but I do have some questions that lead me.
And the
to,
proof I submit to the class
ask you for
is,
conclusions.
well,
one
Hank
question
Johnson's going to get
is,
up and ask questions in a second.
Were there notes?
And we already
of
heard from
the,
Sheila
of the
Jackson Lee's dumbass.
President of the United States that dated back to when he was a senator?
And
that
they
contained
continue to
classified
get elected
information?
time after time.
Among
after
the
time.
documents that were recovered during our investigation were marked classified documents that dated back to when Mr. Biden was a senator.
When he was in his 30s, 40s, 50s.
I believe that's correct.
And were there documents from the time that he was vice president?
Yes.
Okay. So there's been a lot to do about, senility, non-senility, poor memory, and so on. But let's just go through something that you deal with as a prosecutor every day. You first start off with a set of initial evidence that indicates there may have been a crime. Is that right? By the time it gets to you, usually you have some evidence that there may have been a crime.
I think that is fair, yes.
Okay, and in this case, at some point during this investigation where the elements of the crime, including willfulness, were put before you and you reached a personal conclusion that either there was likely guilt or not. Is that correct? Not provable, not in front of a jury, just personal, because you have to make that decision as part of the case, correct?
Correct. And I would say I approach the task as I have been trained to as a prosecutor, which is as on an iterative basis. The investigation is always uncovering new evidence that you incorporate.
Right. So both before, during, and at the end, did you reach a conclusion, notwithstanding his current mental state of being an elderly man with a poor memory and so on?
Yeah, Giz, I said pretty much that
did,
same
in
thing
fact,
earlier. Biden's always been a
deliberately
lying piece of shit.
Documents
racist
and held
who
them
his entire
from back when he
career.
was a senator. And we're talking about your personal, not that you could prove it, but personally, did you see a pattern that goes all the way back to him being a senator of taking documents, making notes, and taking them and holding them personally?
Congressman,
I don't know.
viewed
There's
my task as a
ketones. There's a lot of
prosecutor
other things they could hop him up on
determine
besides
what I
meth.
believed the evidence.
No, I appreciate that. And I'm not trying to take away from your conclusion. Some others are debating the
There's all
conclusion.
sorts of
I'm not
other
debating the
amphetamines they could put him
conclusion.
on.
I just want to go through one element that I think is important. Look, you've prosecuted people in the past and failed to get a conviction. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, you're not a 1,000 perfect batting average. Okay.
I can't say that.
Yeah.
So you went into cases thinking that you would succeed and you didn't. One might say you probably declined to prosecute ones that you might have either gotten a conviction or gotten a plea on. Would you say that's fair to say over your long career?
I think that's fair because I take the rules as set forth in the Justice Manual seriously.
However,
well, that's pretty much what
I'm
it
going
said,
to
Barton. You
presume
just kind of
that
got to
you
read
would
in
never
between the lines on
prosecute
that.
someone you thought was outright innocent.
Correct.
In
mean,
this
look at
case,
Hillary
did
Clinton.
you reach a conclusion that this man was outright innocent?
That conclusion is not reflected in my report, sir.
Right. So you did not reach that conclusion, or it would have been in your report.
I viewed my task of explaining my decision to the Attorney General as being based on my judgment and my assessment of the evidence. Would a conviction at trial be the probable outcome? That's what's
And I just want to make sure the record is complete in that, because I think it's extremely important. You did not reach an idea that he had committed no wrong. You reached a conclusion that you would not prevail at trial and therefore did not take it forward. Is that correct?
correct, Congressman.
Okay.
Again, like
just
I
want to
said
go to one
earlier,
or two
he
little
wasn't
pieces of
exonerated on
housekeeping
shit.
almost. The documents that the president, then vice president, took, which included his own notes, to your knowledge, aren't those covered by the Freedom of Information Act? Potentially.
I honestly do not know, Congressman.
Aren't they covered by the Presidential Records Act, as every note and every text of the president, the vice president, and members of the cabinet are covered?
I think different folks would have different views on whether they're covered by the PRA, Congressman.
But isn't it true that he left office leaving no copies of that behind, and that alone was inconsistent with an open and transparent individual, correct?
I'm not aware of copies of those materials being left behind, Congressman.
Okay, I want to thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the extra few seconds. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hur, you've led a distinguished career, earning your law degree from Stanford University, and you served as a student as executive editor of the Stanford Law Review, correct?
Correct.
Then you went on to clerk for Judge Kaczynski of the Ninth Circuit, correct?
Yes, sir.
After that, you
Not
ascended
getting
to
warm and fuzzies
clerkship
about
with
this
then
guy.
Chief Justice William Rehnquist on the United States Supreme Court, correct?
Correct.
And then you later joined the Daddy Bush Department of Justice as a special assistant to known Federalist Society member and now FBI Director Christopher Wray. Isn't that correct?
I did spend some time working for former Assistant Attorney General Christopher Wray.
And you later joined the
known Federalist
Justice
Society
Department
member.
as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, working as the right-hand man for another known Federalist Society member, Rod Rosenstein. Isn't that correct?
I served as Mr. Rosenstein's principal deputy.
And then Donald Trump appointed you to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland. Is that correct?
President Trump nominated me to serve in that position, and I was
you were
unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate.
That's correct. And thereafter, Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed you to serve as special counsel for the United States Department of Justice to conduct a full and thorough investigation of certain matters to determine whether or not Joseph Biden should be charged with unlawfully removing and retaining classified documents. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
And nowhere in that order does Attorney General Garland authorize you to conduct an investigation and issue a report on whether President Biden is mentally fit to serve as president. Isn't that correct?
That does not appear in the appointment order.
And pursuant to your appointment to conclude your investigation, you issued a report that was published by Attorney General Garland, correct?
He made it available to Congress, sir.
And your report concluded that after a full and thorough investigation, the evidence was insufficient to establish that President Biden had
No, that's not what he said.
retained classified
He didn't say it was
documents.
insufficient.
Isn't that correct?
My judgment was that based on the state of the evidence, a conviction at trial was not the probable outcome.
And you determined that there was no evidence of willful retention because each time classified documents were discovered to be in the
It doesn't
president's
have to be
possession.
willful to be
The
convicted
White
of
House
classified
notified the
documents,
National
you
Archives
fucking middle
right
midget.
away. The Biden legal team and the White House fully cooperated with the National
And
Archives.
it was definitely willful, and
during the
Biden admitted it
investigation.
in his
Once
goddamn
the
interview.
DOJ
It
opened
was
the
my
investigation,
documents.
President Biden and his personal counsel fully
He'd
cooperated.
been keeping the shit since he
Isn't
was a
that correct?
senator.
We did identify some evidence of willful retention and disclosure, but we
But
also
the point
noted in
is,
the
though, that the president cooperated fully with you. And didn't President, I mean, they never
So if you
tried to
rob a
hide
bank,
any
but you
documents
cooperate
from
with
you.
authorities
The
to
report does note steps of cooperation taken by the president.
Thank you, sir. And
go over
last
the bank
but not
robbery
least,
and
unlike
admit to
in the
everything,
Trump
well,
classified
they don't get to
documents
charge you, I
case,
guess.
President Biden's counsel never falsely certified that there was no classified documents in the president's possession, correct?
The report does include some comparisons and contrasts between the facts alleged in the Trump case and the Biden case.
Despite
And what
clearing
Trump said is,
President
I'm
Biden from
president,
being
or I was
prosecuted,
president, and I
you
declassified
used
it,
your
which he had
report
all the
to
power in the world
trash
to do.
and smear President Biden because he said in response to questions over a 5-hour interview that he didn't recall how he got the documents. And you knew that that would play into the Republicans' narrative that the president is unfit for office because he's senile. And the American people saw during the State of the Union address that that was not true. But yet that's what you tried to offer to them, and that's why they are having you here.
They had him
today,
lucid for
so that they
over a
can
little over an
expand upon
hour,
that narrative, and you knew that that's what was going to happen.
while the rest of the time he can't even walk
Congressman,
from
I
Air Force
reject the suggestion
whatever,
that you have
to the
just
White House
made.
without getting
It's
lost.
not what happens.
Let me move on.
Partisan
then,
politics
sir.
play
You
no
are a
part
member
whatsoever in my work.
You are
My
a member
work
of the
was
Federalist
independent
Society, are you not?
and fair.
Are you a member of the Federalist Society?
I am not a member of the Federalist Society.
But you are a Republican, though, aren't you?
I am a registered Republican.
Yes, sir. And you're doing everything you can do to get President Trump reelected.
You hear
so
the
that you
clapping in
can
the
get
background?
appointed as a federal judge or perhaps to another position in the Department of Justice. Isn't that correct?
Congressman, I have no such aspirations, I can assure you, and I can tell you that partisan politics had no place whatsoever in my work. It had no place in the investigative steps that I took. It had no place in the decision that I made, and it had no place in a single word of my report.
Thank you,
Gentlemen, gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hur, thank you for being here. You know, I think for the folks that may be watching this at home, they might be a little bit confused, and I'm trying to organize this in my mind as well. The way the president is portrayed in your report and just how we feel about him. Was he a well-meaning, forgetful man, as you said? Or was he a man that was focused on history? Was he a man that maintained and retained these top secret documents that should have been not in his home? And was he a man that wanted to prove he was worthy to be president and that his vision of Afghanistan was better than even President Barack Obama's and that his focus on history was most important to him? Do you know which it is?
Congressman, to the extent you're quoting language from my report, I stand by the words in my report.
So you stand by that he was, and let me quote you exactly, quote, a well-meaning but forgetful old man.
I don't think those exact words appear in the report, Congressman, but to the extent that I use words similar to that effect in my assessment of how a jury would perceive Mr. Biden and the evidence relating to him, including his testimony, I do stand by that assessment.
So is it accurate to say that in your interview, President Biden retained and disclosed classified materials as a means to bolster his image as a presidential figure? And I'm going to ask you for yes or no's here because our time is so limited.
I believe words to that effect are in my report, Congressman.
So the answer is yes. Would you agree that President Biden's intent to showcase his legacy provides a motive for his actions concerning classified materials? Yes or no?
It is one of the motives addressed in the report.
Yep, to showcase his legacy. Is it accurate to quote your report that classified documents were found in, quote, badly damaged boxes in his garage near a collapsed dog crate, a dog bed, a Zappos box, and an empty bucket? Is that correct?
Those words do appear in the report.
So that's correct. The answer is yes. Are these secure locations to store classified documents?
They are not.
Okay, so we got a former vice president who is established to have willfully,
Ever since he
purposely
was a
retained
senator.
classified documents in order to highlight his political stature and show his stature as a presidential figure. We have a former vice president who stored classified documents in very unsecured places. We have a former vice president who will not suffer any consequences.
Remember, every time
for all
these
of these
Democrats
actions,
talked about it
all
earlier,
because we say, well, he's a
they
well-meaning,
were in
forgetful
secure
old man.
locations, locked
You know,
filing
if you were
cabinets,
kind
all
of
this
a
shit.
well-meaning,
Horse
forgetful old
shit.
man that was driving a car and you forgot what you were doing a little bit and you hit somebody and killed them, I believe you'd be responsible. The law must apply, you know this, to everyone. The standard behind the decision not to prosecute Joe Biden, especially in light of
Again,
Special
all of
Counsel
this,
Jack
all of
Smith's
this
decision
crap
to
is
prosecute
nothing
President
more
Trump
than to
for
give a
similar
reason
conduct
for Joe Biden to
gives
step
the
down,
real
be protected
appearance of
from any
two
charges for any of
standards.
his dealings,
Just
Ukraine and
again,
otherwise,
so
and
much
then be
part of this
replaced
Department of
by
Justice. Justice for
some other
thee,
Democrat stepping up.
but not for me. Special Counsel Hur, has any former president or vice president besides President Trump ever been criminally charged for knowingly retaining classified information after they left office? Yes or no?
No.
Would you concur that Special Counsel Smith's decision to charge a former president for retaining and disclosing classified information was an extraordinary, unusual, and unprecedented decision?
I will not comment on that matter.
Well, I'm going to comment. The answer is yes. Special Counsel Hur, these two reports are the culmination, in my mind, of the Department of Justice's two standards, and an example, again, of the Justice Department being weaponized against conservatives. You know, there's another piece to this, too. I have just a few seconds. We know that when his ghostwriter was speaking to him, he also did recordings. And when he did those recordings, it was clear. In fact, I'll try to quote this here. It was a month in 2017, a month after Biden left as VP. He was aware of top secret classified materials that were, quote, downstairs. Is that true?
That is reflected in an audio recording, yes.
It's reflected in an audio record, you know. So sometimes he may be sleepy, sometimes he may be forgetful, sometimes he may be cognitively impaired. There's no doubt about that. But man, when it came to his personal legacy, the way he wanted to be remembered, to be sure that he was a big deal, in plain English, in the future, he was willingly and knowingly breaking the law. And it's unfortunate that we have a Department of Justice that will treat one person one way and somebody else a different way. It's a sad day for America. Thank you, Mr. Hur. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Sir, I want to ask you about some of the differences between the facts involving President Biden and President Trump. But before I do,
oh
I want
God,
to refer back to your opening statement in which you said that you did not disparage the president in your report. But of course, you did disparage the president. You disparaged him in terms you had to know would have a maximal political impact. You understood your report would be public, right?
I understood, based on comments that the Attorney General had made, that he had committed to make as much of my report public as
and
consistent
remember,
with legal
the first
policy
page of that
and,
report
legal requirements.
shows that Biden's
And
team
you could
got
have
to
chosen
approve
just to
the
comment
wording
on
in
the
the
president's
report. They
particular
knew
recall
what it
vis-a-vis a
said
document or a
before
set
it
of
was released.
documents. But you decided to go further and make a generalized statement about his memory, didn't you?
Congressman, I could have written my report theoretically in a way that omitted references to the president's memory, but that would have been an incomplete and improper report, and that
That
it did
wasn't
not
my
reflect my
question, though.
analysis.
You could
and
have
the
written,
explanation of my
you could
decision
have
to the
written your
Attorney General.
report with comments about his specific recollection as to documents or a set of documents, but you chose a general pejorative reference to the president. You understood when you made that decision, didn't you, Mr. Hur, that you would ignite a political firestorm with that language, didn't you?
Congressman, politics played no part whatsoever in my investigative steps.
But you
my
understood
decision,
nevertheless,
or the words
didn't
that
you,
I put in my
Mr. Hur?
report.
Mr. Hur, you cannot tell me you're so naive as to think your words would not have created a political firestorm. You understood that, didn't you, when you wrote those words, when you decided to include those words, when you decided to go beyond specific references to documents? You understood how they would be manipulated by my colleagues here on the GOP side of the aisle and by President Trump. You understood that, did you not?
Congressman, what I understood is the regulations that govern my conduct as special counsel.
And those regulations
required me to write a confidential report for the Attorney General,
which you knew would not be
explaining my
confidential.
decision, and that
Which
is
you
what I
knew-
did, Congressman. I
Mr. Hur,
followed the rules.
You knew it
I
would
knew the
not be
rules, and I
confidential.
followed them.
You knew it would not be confidential, didn't you?
Sir, the regulations required me to write a confidential report explaining my decision to the Attorney General.
Which you knew would be released.
It was up to the Attorney General to
But you
determine
understood
what
it would be
portions of the
released, did
report
you
would be
not?
released consistent with
You-
DOJ policy.
You
and
understood it
legal
would be
requirements.
released. You understood it would be released.
I
Again,
understood
shift,
from
you
the Attorney General's
jackass, and
public
you
comments
know that Biden
he
and
would
them
make
had
as
to
much of my
approve
report
the
public
language
as
before it
he
was
could,
released.
consistent with legal requirements and DOJ
And you also
policy.
understand DOJ policy that you are to take care not to prejudice the interests of the subject of an investigation, right?
That is generally one of the interests that DOJ policy requires that prosecutors respect.
And it was your obligation to follow that policy in this report, was it not?
It was also my obligation to write a confidential report for the Attorney General explaining completely
But
my
what
decision.
you did write was deeply prejudicial to the interests of the president. You say it wasn't political, and yet you must have understood.
Again, this thing
You
didn't
must have
go
understood
public.
the impact of your words.
You know, as soon
You
as
must
it
have
was
understood the impact
published
of
and
your
no one
decision
got
to go
to
beyond
agree
the
to the
specifics
language,
of a
this
particular
is a report
document
that
to
could
go
have
to the
stayed
very general,
completely
to your own
sealed.
personal, prejudicial, subjective opinion of the president, one you knew would be amplified by his political opponent, one you knew that would influence a political campaign. You had to
Yeah, that's
understand
probably
that.
about it, Barton.
And you did it anyway.
Which
You did it anyway.
these dumbass Democrats, Shift and others know
let me just
exactly
go-
what this is about. They know
Just go to some of the
exactly
differences here
that this is
between the
about
president's
getting Biden
conduct
to the
and Mr.
point where
Trump's.
he can be
In the
released from all
superseding
culpability
indictment,
for anything, step down and
on
let someone
page
else take over.
3, it says that Mr.
Schiff is a
Trump
lying sack of shit who
suggested that
came out
his
every
attorney falsely
day
represented to the FBI and
this
grand jury
Russia,
that he
Russia,
did not
Russia,
have
Russia.
documents
We
called
have
for
all
by
this
the grand
evidence,
jury
Russian
subpoena.
collusion,
You didn't find
and was
anything like
lying
that
the
with respect
entire
to Mr.
goddamn
Biden,
time.
did you?
Congressman, I do not have the Trump indictment in front of me, but I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you were suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an
What is
explanation
in the
of my decision
rules,
to the Attorney
Mr.
General.
Hur, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't
He
gratuitously
had to give
add
a reason
language
for
that you know
declining
will
to
be
prosecute,
useful in
you
a political
jackass.
campaign.
And there
You
was
were
so
not
much
born
evidence to
yesterday.
overcome.
You understood
He had to say
exactly
we couldn't get a
what you were
conviction.
doing. It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this, I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You
But if you
understood
watch
that,
the
you made a
deposition of
choice.
Trump
It
saying,
was
I
a
don't
political
recall,
choice.
stuff like
It
that.
was the wrong
Oh,
choice.
Schiff's all
Mr.
over it. Look at
Chairman,
his
I yield.
memory. His memory's so
Gentleman
bad.
yields back. Gentleman from Arizona.
It's such
Did-
a
did-
fucking
did the
double
special
standard.
counsel
These
wish to
guys are
respond to that
so
final question?
intellectually
Yes,
dishonest.
Congressman, what you are suggesting
They're flat out
is that I
lying.
shape, sanitize, omit portions of my reasoning and explanation to the Attorney General for political reasons.
No, I suggest that you not shape your report for political reasons, which is what you
time is
did.
the
That did
witness
not
in
happen,
response.
Congressman. That did not happen.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Chairman, thank you, Mr. Hur, for being here. Thank you for
Anything,
your read it.
unless it's another
And
Democrat,
I think
has more
where you and I
integrity
might
than
have
Adam Schiff.
disagreements, there may be matters of opinion and not necessarily the facts.
There are murderers
So I
in
wanna
prison
go
right
over,
now who have more integrity than him.
the elements of the offense that seem to have at least struck my craw is the where you put in here twice that the jury would not likely to find intentionality on the part of disclosure in particular. So I want to talk about that for a second. So if it's not willful, we might say an accident.
There's
something
no part of the
negligent,
statute on classified
careless,
documents that
that
says
would
it has to be
not necessarily rise
willful.
to willful or intentional or purposeful, right?
Those are different standards of intent under the law. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, so when President Biden misplaced 30 briefing documents in 2010 that had classified material, and they're not sure even if they ever got them all back, or when he was in the Hamptons at a party and he lost what they were calling code words, which is high security information, that wasn't necessarily willful. There was no indication that he purposefully did that. Accidental, negligent. You indicated, don't know if we even got all that information back. We're assuming maybe we did. That would not be willful, right?
As reflected in the report, there were certain categories of documents where when we looked into them and investigated how they got to where they ended up, or how they ended up being misplaced. We did not identify evidence of willfulness.
Yeah, and so if something's willful, you wouldn't say it's ignorant, it's not incompetent, it's not accidental. We'd say something like it's willful, it's intentional, it's purposeful. It indicates really a choice that you have made a deliberate, conscious decision to act in a certain way. Is that fair?
That is fair, Congressman. And as I explained in the report, the standard, the willfulness standard basically can be boiled down to the following things: that you know that what you are doing is against the law when you do it.
Correct. So let's take a look at it. And this has been brought up before in February of 2017. He's having the discussion with the ghostwriter. He says, he's at the Virginia house at this point. He says, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs, right? So he knows he's got classified stuff, right? 2 months later, in April, he's at a different location, is my understanding. I think he's now up in Delaware. And as you look at let's look at 105, 106 here. He says, Biden reads from a different notebook entry. He reads aloud from notes summarizing a range of issues. We're talking about U.S. military and views expressed there by the intelligence community, the DNI, CIA director. And while he's reading those notes, he says, I can't read my own writing. Do you have any idea what the heck I'm saying here? He asked the ghostwriter. Ghostwriter says, well, something, blah, blah, blah. And Biden says this: some of this may be classified, so be careful. Some of this may be classified, so be careful. Now, my immediate response was, okay, so he knows he's got classified docs. He's looking at this. He can't read it. He's giving this to somebody he knows has no security clearance. So he says, hey, read this, but be careful. It might be classified. The next thing, and the guy says, okay. Next thing he says, well, I don't know if it's classified or not. I'm suggesting to you, and this is where you and I have a difference of opinion. When you say something like, hey, look, this may be classified, be careful. That warning to be careful because it may be classified, that indicates guilty knowledge. That indicates he might know something more than he otherwise would have. And it indicates, then they go on and they read it. As you point out here, he reads classified information, and it's still classified today. That's on page 106. So when you look at this, it's hard for me to say, well, he was ignorant, he was incompetent, he was accidental. No. He had guilty knowledge. He knew and told the guy that he's going to expose that classified material to, hey, be careful. Be careful. It may be classified. That indicates something a little bit more than mere knowledge. Indicates that he has some intent there. Because the next thing he should have said is, hey, I don't know if it's classified, but we're going to skip over this until that's resolved. He didn't do that. What he said is, read it anyway. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Hur, I was moved by your parents'
Here we go with
story
Mr. Shits'
and how
pants
that
in
has shaped
the middle
you.
of a TV interview.
And their story is a story that so many of us know through our constituents. It's the story of America. It's a story that the guy who appointed you would end if he was in charge again. It's a story that most of the folks on the other side of the aisle
Good old
seek to
swallow
block
as well.
every day in this room, but it's a story that's persuasive. You want your report to be received with credibility, is that right?
My goal was to provide a thorough explanation of my decision to the Attorney General as I was required to do. And as I said in my opening statement, I felt that I needed to show my work.
And you want to be received as credible, right?
That would be helpful and laudable, yes.
Well, a lot has changed since 2018 for the person who appointed you, former President Trump. Since you were appointed, he was impeached for leveraging 350 million US taxpayer dollars over Ukraine to get dirt on President Biden. He was then impeached a second time for inciting an insurrection. He was charged for possessing classified documents and obstructing justice. He was charged for paying for the silence of a porn star. He was charged in Georgia for his role in January 6th. He was charged in the District of Columbia for his role in January 6th. He owes $400 million to the state of New York for defrauding the state through his taxes, and he has been judged a rapist. You want to be perceived, understandably, as credible, and so I want to first see if you will pledge to not accept an appointment from Donald Trump if he is elected again as president.
Congressman, I'm not here to testify
Seems like an
today
easy
about
answer,
what will happen in the future.
considering what I just laid out.
I'm here to talk about the report and the work that went into it. And
But you don't want to be associated with that guy again, do you?
Congressman, I'm not here to offer any opinions about what may or may not happen in the future. I'm here to talk about the work that went into the report, which I stand by.
There were no limits on you as to what you could charge President Biden by the Attorney General. Is that right?
The decisions that I made that are reflected in the report are my own.
And you did not bring any charges. Is that correct?
Correct.
There were no limits on John Durham and his investigation of the prior administration when he was special counsel. Is that right?
I don't believe I have the information required to answer the question about the Durham investigation.
Well, he sat in the same chair that you're sitting in. He told us that he also investigated President Biden and President Obama and did not bring any charges. President Biden sat for an interview with you over 2 days for approximately 10 hours. Is that right?
A little over 5 hours, Congressman.
Over 2 days.
Correct.
You know, that's in sharp contrast to a guy who did not sit for an interview when the Mueller investigation took place. That was Donald Trump. Did not sit for an interview when he was impeached in this committee room by the Judiciary Committee. Did not sit for an interview when the second impeachment occurred and he was invited to sit for an interview for his role in January 6th. And did not sit for an interview in the January 6th January 6th case or the classified documents case. Chairman also has not sat for an interview in his own subpoena, but Joe Biden has. I now want to turn you to the transcript and day 1, page 47. You said
that's because Biden knew he was going to be protected all
President
the way.
Biden, you appear to have a photographic understanding and recall of the House. Did you say that to President Biden?
Those words do appear on page 47 of the transcript.
Photographic is what you said. Is that right?
That word does appear on page 47 of the transcript.
Never appeared in your report, though. Is that correct? The word photographic?
That does not appear in my report.
I now want to show you and play a video of what is absolutely not photographic.
In the failing New York Times by an anonymous, really an anonymous, gutless coward.
We are a nation that just recently heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation.
And I watch our police and our firemen down in 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center.
And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
This is the very definition of totalitarianism.
And let me begin by wishing you a beautiful, look, you remember this? Do you remember?
God bless
the
United States. The windmills are driving them crazy. They're driving the whales, I think a little batty. And I went to Puerto Rico and I met with the president of the
gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hur, I'm way down here
White House long without
into the
people
dais. I think today the Justice Department released the transcripts of the interviews with President Biden. Are you aware of that?
I understand that to be true, yes.
Did you have any involvement in the decision or the timing of the release of the transcripts?
No, Congressman.
Did you make any recommendation about the release of the transcripts or being done or not?
I did not. That was above my pay grade.
Yeah, I don't know why they've been released so close to this hearing, but it sort of it impacts our ability to evaluate your report and ask you questions about it. So, but there's one point, just as an illustration, on 221 of your report, you're describing, I think, it's the Afghan pack or something like that about in 2009, I think is the information came from. And
I had about another 5 minutes. I got to kill this. I got to get on the road.
As one reason not to prosecute, Mr. Biden says, in addition, Mr. Biden told us in his interview that he does not recognize the marking
because I'm going to be listening to it
confidential as a classification marking. To him, the marking means the document should be held in confidence, but not necessarily that it is classified. And footnote 866 is a reference, and it refers to the Biden 10/9/23 transcript at 24 and 25. Now, we have that now, but we haven't until this morning. But I just want to read from that exchange. This is on page 24 at line 15. Mr. Crickbaum. So this is a typewritten document. It's got a confidential, what appears to be a stamp at the top. And the top of the document indicates it's from the American AM Embassy, Kabul. It's dated what appears to me to be November 09. The only question I have for you about this, Mr. President, is the confidential marking. Do you recognize that to be a classification marking? President Biden, no. I mean, confidential doesn't want to get around. It's not in a category, I don't think, of code word, top secret, that kind of thing, but I don't even know where it came from. Mr. Crickbaum, are you familiar with confidential as a level of classified information? President Biden, well, if I got a document that said confidential, it would mean that no one else could see it but me, and you give it or the people working on this issue. Mr. Crickbaum, and are you aware that among certain categories of classified information, there is top secret, secret, and there's also a category of classified information called confidential? Is that something that you are aware of or not? President Biden, yes, I was aware of it. I don't ever remember when I got any document that was confidential that was meant for me to read and or discuss with the people who sent me the memo. So, and then it trails off. So as I read those answers, they're equivocal. He at first says he doesn't know. Do you recognize that to be a classification marking? He said no, and then goes on to explain. But then Mr. Crickbaum came back and he said, are you aware that among certain categories of classified information, there's also a category of classified information called confidential? And he says, yes, I was aware of it. So Mr. Hur, just in that one instance, there seems to be a discrepancy between the conclusion in the report or the summary of the evidence in the report and what the transcript says. Can you offer any guidance to this committee why you would put that summary in your report as opposed to saying that he gave inconsistent answers? Or in fact, why didn't you nail down in the transcript which was the right answer? He's given answers that says no, and then he says yes. Why didn't you pursue it until you knew?
Congressman, the report reflects our best efforts to summarize and characterize the evidence in the investigation, including the investigation we received from the president himself during our interview of him. But as you point out, the transcripts of the president's interview over 2 days are now available to the committee.
Because no matter what, this wasn't about holding Biden accountable. This is about getting Biden off the hook.
Based on the transcripts that are now available.
And allowing him to be replaced.
And I appreciate your answer.
Without charges.
And I certainly think things, you can come up with some details that someone can disagree on, and it has the quality, I know, of some cherry picking because I've just found something, but we've only had a little bit of time to look. I don't think it serves this process well for the Justice Department to dump these transcripts into the public right now. If they were going to be released, they should have been released at a proper time. And I think I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yield.
I will yield to the chairman.
Just real quick, Mr. Hur, someone earlier said, said something about changing the facts. You said, I'm not going to change the facts, but let's keep the facts the same, but change the subject. You had the same facts, and the individual that you were investigating was 65 and had a good memory. Do you reach the same conclusion?
Congressman, as I responded earlier to a question along these lines, I am not here to entertain hypotheticals about facts or circumstances that may be different. What I did was assess the evidence and the facts that I obtained in this investigation and make a judgment based on this set of evidence.
Fair enough. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Washington for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Special Counsel Hur, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. In your investigation, you reviewed more than 7 million documents and conducted 173 interviews of 147 witnesses, including President Biden. Is that correct?
Yes, Congresswoman.
And your 15-month investigation cost several $1 million and resulted in a comprehensive 345-page report with several dozen pages of appendices. Is it correct that, as it says in the first sentence of your executive summary, that your investigation concluded with an assessment that, quote, no criminal charges are warranted in this matter?
Correct.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden. For every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of the word that you used, exoneration. That is not a
Mr.
word
Hur,
that
I'm
appears
going
in
to
the report.
continue with
That's
my
not part of my
questions.
task as a
I'm going to continue
prosecutor.
with my
The
questions. I
judgment
know
that I
that the
received,
term,
I ultimately reached
I
related
know
to
that the
whether sufficient
term,
evidence existed such that the likely
you didn't,
outcome
you
would be a
exonerated him.
conviction.
I know
I
that
did
the
not
term
exonerate him. That
willful
word does not appear in the
retention has a,
report, Congresswoman.
Mr. Hur, it's my time. Thank you. I know that the term willful retention has a particular legal meaning, and I want to make sure that that meaning is absolutely clear to the American people before we go any further. As you wrote in your report, to prove as a matter of law that the president, quote, willfully retained any documents, you would need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt two elements. First, that the president knowingly retained or disclosed national defense information, and second, that he knew that this conduct was unlawful. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And to be
Oh,
very,
and
very
I'm sorry, Congressman, that it was national defense information. That's an important third element.
Okay, thank you. To be very, very clear, you did not find sufficient evidence to prove either of those elements beyond a reasonable doubt to show that Mr. Biden willfully retained any of the classified national defense materials that were recovered during your investigation, correct?
My conclusion was that the admissible evidence was not sufficient to make conviction at trial a probable outcome.
Not sufficient. Thank you. Let me ask you about a few specific examples so the American people are clear. One set of documents was discovered by investigators in the president's Delaware home. His staff had assembled those documents into binders in 2014 to prepare him for an event with Charlie Rose. Some of the documents in those binders were marked classified. You reviewed all of the facts surrounding the classified documents in those binders, and you determined, and this is a quote from your report, these facts do not support a conclusion that Mr. Biden willfully retained the marked classified documents in these binders, correct?
That language does appear in the report.
You also reviewed another set of classified documents from the president's home related to the Afghanistan troop surge in 2009, and you evaluated whether the president willfully retained such documents in his Delaware home or a home that he rented in Virginia in 2017. In your report, you said that there was, quote, a shortage of evidence, end quote, for any wrongdoing, and, quote, other innocent explanations for the documents that we cannot refute, end quote. Are those quotes correct?
Congresswoman, if you have particular page sites for those quotations, I'd be happy to confirm their
Page
accuracy.
6. It's right up on the screen.
Middle of jive hole. This lady, well, she's like a lot
Respect
of
to the
them.
two quotes that are on the screen, in addition to this shortage of evidence, there are other innocent explanations for documents we cannot refute, and we conclude the evidence is not sufficient to convict, and we decline to
I was
recommend
just going to get to that.
prosecution.
And you concluded that,
Those quotes
quote,
do
the
appear on page
evidence
6
is
of
not
the report.
sufficient to convict, and we decline to recommend prosecution, end quote. Those are your words in the report, correct?
Those words appear in the report.
Fluffy, what's up,
President
bro?
Biden's counsel discovered a different set
So-
of documents at the Penn Biden Center and voluntarily turned them over to
Anyway,
the FBI.
I got to start getting
Those
out of here. I got to
documents
get to
contain
work.
national security
Like I said, I
information,
will fire
but
this
you
back
determined
up
that you could not, in
as
fact,
soon as I can,
prove
because I want to
that
listen to the
President
rest of this
Biden
too.
willfully retained those
It's way
documents
more fun
because,
listening
quote,
with
the evidence
everybody's in
suggests
chat
that the
and we can
marked
shoot the shit in
classified
the chat
documents found at the Penn Biden Center were sent
than
and
it
kept
is
there
me
by
just wanting
mistake.
to bang my head
Therefore,
against the
we
wall.
decline
listening to it.
any criminal charges related to those documents, end quote, correct?
The language "we decline any criminal charges related to those documents" does appear at page 311 of the report.
Thank you. You also reached a similar conclusion regarding the documents found in President
we're gonna
Biden's
stay
Senate
safe,
papers
Sam.
at
You
the
do the
University
same,
of
brother.
Delaware. Quote, for these reasons, it is likely that the few classified documents
Hey,
found
no problem,
in
Gary.
Mr.
You know,
Biden's
I'm
Senate
going to be
papers
listening to this kind of crap
at the
anyway,
University
so
of Delaware were
I
there
might as
by
well share the
mistake,
pain
correct?
with everybody
That
else.
language does appear at page 325
Pretty
of
much
the
the
report.
story of
So
my
it
channel
seems to me
these
that the
days.
crux of the report,
So,
the main story is
anyway,
that you
you folks
found
be cool.
insufficient evidence to prove beyond a
As usual,
reasonable
keep
doubt
that thing
that
on you
President
all the
Biden
time.
willfully
We'll
retained
see you
any
guys back in the
classified
chat in a
materials.
little bit.
That is the
Because I'll be
story
at work
of this
running
report.
around, but I'll be
And I
listening
yield
to
back,
this and
Mr.
be
Chairman.
Gentleman
able
yields
to
back.
chat.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized.
Anyway,
Mr.
let me get
Chairman,
out of here, guys.
I just
Love all
thank
you guys. Be cool.
Special
Have a good
Counsel
rest
for
of the
being
day.
here in this
We'll see you back
challenging
in
times.
chat.
And I
don't
want
know,
to tell
probably
you a
about
few
an hour,
things that is
maybe.
interesting for me. You obviously could see that there is a motive.
I'll have to back it up
and
so
a
we can listen to
legacy.
Sparks.
You
'Cause
obviously
Sparks is
see that it was a
normally
willful
a
retention
fucking
of these
fireball.
documents.
So,
But it's
anyway,
interesting
we'll
for
see you
me
guys in a
that
little while.
when you talk about sympathetic, well-meaning older man with